Greetings, everyone! Ready for today's recap of You're Just a Supporting Character, so love me? Subscribe now and let's jump right in. The main character sees a blonde man in front of her, shining so brightly as if the sunlight itself had descended to Earth. His blue eyes twinkle like distant stars, and for a moment the lady thinks that this is truly paradise. At that very second, the thought occurs to her that he has come to plunge her into eternal sleep, but she knows one thing for sure. She is seeing this man for the first time. And yet, a strange feeling stirs within. The guy admits he doesn't understand how it all happened, but the lady remains courageous. He says that if she tells the truth, he will show mercy and put her into eternal sleep with one stroke of his blade. The girl looks at the dagger and notices an incredibly complex pattern, the likes of which she has never seen before. The light from the gemstone that adorns the weapon also seems strange and completely different from the usual one. Shocked, the main character asks if it is really Kyle, and the young man is surprised that she realized this only now. She would never have found out anything if she hadn't snuck in here secretly. At that very moment, the girl rises and cries out that she understands everything. Behind him hangs a flag with a scarlet hawk, the symbol of the Imperial Biltion dynasty. The lady says he is exactly as she imagined him, although in real life he looks much more impressive. It seemed as if a hawk was about to soar into the sky. The young man abruptly pulled her back, asking if she had gone mad, and what would have happened if the knife had grazed her head. And then the girl feels pain in her neck, touches it, and thinks with horror about the red liquid. She looks in the mirror and does not understand who this woman is, and whether the reflection really belongs to her. Her head suddenly starts to spin, and the girl realizes what the expression about happiness means, from which you lose your balance. After that, she collapses onto the bed. The blonde man, watching her, wonders if she's fainted with a smile on her face. The novel she started reading without a second thought 6 months ago was called The Grey Cardinal. In the distant sacred lands of the Biltion Empire, there exists a country where only those with scarlet eyes can rule. The emperor had several princes, and one after another misfortune befell those whose eye color was different. One was secretly put into eternal sleep, and another experienced a suspicious incident. Most of the emperor's children disappeared forever, but he did not attach any importance to this because their eyes were not scarlet. And one day, the one who was considered missing returned. It was the fourth prince, Isaac. Everyone thought it impossible, but the black-eyed prince became emperor. And so began a story that, as trite as it may sound, revolves around one hero. His life is nothing but luck, and aren't characters like him guaranteed a happy ending? And for the sake of this ending, there are always secondary characters who are not destined for happiness. Kyle de Biltion, the first prince of the Biltion dynasty, had blue eyes. He had to endure a mother obsessed with the idea of making him emperor. He desperately wanted to become the recognized heir, but ended up at war. In a war where there was no chance of victory, there too he met his miserable fate. The main character understands that such an ending is completely unsuitable for her cutie. After all, everyone has 3 rights: freedom, equality, and love. Everyone is born with them, except for characters like Kyle, who seem destined to be unloved. They are thrown away when they become unnecessary, and the girl cannot come to terms with this. Even if their role is far from the main one, it is still unfair. Therefore, the lady decides that even if he is a secondary character, at least for her, he will be the main one, and she wants to make him happy. The girl's name is Kim Jeum-ja. As usual, she was working overtime and dragging her exhausted body home late at night, but a speeding truck interrupted her path. People have long been familiar with the strange feeling of being hit by a truck. Then she was completely broken because of one minor character in the novel. It was Kyle de Biltion from The Grey Cardinal, a man who never found happiness and disappeared after Volume 3. Not a single living soul mourned his plunge into eternal sleep, and the girl's first emotion was emptiness. She felt like it would help to talk about Kyle, so she started looking for blogs about the novel, even where authors actively discuss their work, and in the personal account of the creator of the story. She couldn't find a single line about Kyle, and anger began to grow inside her. The girl was furiously indignant. If he was not the main character, then it was not worth talking about him, because she missed Kyle so much. She wanted to love him, who existed only on the pages, a little longer, for there is no illness stronger than love. She reread the novel again and again, and it seemed natural to her to one day meet him in heaven. Now someone asks if she is awake, and the girl realizes that she briefly lost consciousness. The main character wonders if this is all a dream and turns to Kyle. She says that she is not a suspicious person at all. So why did he tie her up? Turning around, she screams, realizing she's still in Kyle's room, on the very bed he'd been resting in. He replies that he found her in his bedroom last night. Now she claims she is not dangerous, but he had to take measures to prevent her from trying to put herself into eternal sleep again before an explanation. The girl wonders what this means because he bandaged her wound, and was he really worried about her? She understands that although Kyle looks cold, in reality he is the kindest of all, like a little canary that you want to protect, even if it would be a crime. The blonde asks for the last time who she is, and the lady doesn't know how to answer. She says that even if she tells him, he won't understand, but he insists that she continue. He listens and decides for himself, and then clicks his tongue, and the girl asks him to look at her. She thinks that if he frowns, wrinkles will appear on his handsome face, and says that she came from Seoul, the capital of the Republic of Korea. Her name is Kim Gi-ja, and she looks at him, wondering if he will say her name with his cherry lips. This is a shining name, for which the father specially chose the hieroglyph for gold. In her thoughts, she asks him to pronounce it with her beautiful voice, similar to the clatter of jade beads. The guy calls her by name, but immediately notices that it is strange. The girl realizes that he pronounced it incorrectly and asks him to repeat it again. He tries, but it gets worse and worse, and the name becomes more and more distorted. The lady is shocked to realize that he can't pronounce it, and the guy asks what she said. He thinks it sounded like the word canary, but at that moment, people burst into the room. It turns out to be knights. They ask if everything is all right with His Highness, because the servants heard the noise. The girl looks at one of them and notices red hair. Amber eyes, freckles, and a tall frame mark him as Kyle's right-hand man. She asks if that's Benji, and he confirms, wondering who she is. The blonde man tells the knight that the girl is a thief. Benji asks if it was an assassination attempt, but his master replies that he is only sure of her suspicion. The knight immediately points his sword at the lady, indignant at how she dared to approach His Highness. The girl screams that she is not an assassin, but an ordinary person who ended up here because of her love for Kyle. The blonde smiles and wonders if she's really saying that she likes him. Benji is amazed to see His Highness smiling, and Kyle remarks that things are getting more and more interesting. He says that at first she came to put him into eternal sleep, and now she confesses her sympathy. Looking at his smile, Kim Gi-ja feels embarrassed and thinks it is too beautiful. Of all the people she's met, only Kyle seems so magnificent that the word handsome should be replaced with his name. Kyle asks Benji to put his sword away because he's curious about what kind of nonsense this girl is talking about. He comes closer, and the girl is happy because she can see his face even better. The guy says that she has no shame or manners, since she keeps calling the prince by his name. Benji doesn't understand what she's talking about, and Kyle explains that she confessed her love and called him by his name. There is silence between them, and the knight says that he heard nothing. He thinks that His Highness is too shocked and is hallucinating. Kim Gi-ja wonders how he could know this, since he can't hear her thoughts. Kyle sheepishly says that the lady called him too handsome, and she said that he was the kindest of all and looked more magnificent than anyone else. The girl screams in shock. Did he really hear all of this? The young man asks if it was all a hallucination, and she wonders if he is a telepath. He clearly heard all her thoughts, and the lady panics, not knowing how to comfort him while he talks about strange voices. The knight claims that this is impossible, and that the girl could have cast a dangerous spell. He feels uneasy, and the main character looks at Kyle with eyes full of love. The blonde orders Benji to find out if anyone in the palace knows about Kim Gi-ja. The knight agrees and promises to question everyone and send requests to the guilds. Kyle hands him a lock of hair, noting that the color is rare. Benji accepts her but doubts whether it is worth leaving His Highness alone with the girl. Kyle replies that who knows and admits that she annoys him a little. But he is confident that everything will be fine, and the knight approaches the lady. He warns that for the slightest disrespect, she will be plunged into eternal sleep at his hand. Kim Gi-ja thinks that Benji is obviously angry since he wasn't even properly described in the novel. When he threatens to throw her into the dungeon, the girl steps on his foot with her heel. The young man screams in pain, claiming that his bone is about to fall off. He panicked and asked how he could leave His Highness alone with such a dangerous man. The blonde calms the guy down and tells him not to worry and to come back quickly, promising to be careful and not get too close to her. After a while, they sit opposite each other, and the main character carefully asks if he can hear her now. The guy replies that no, and the girl begins to wonder why Kyle sometimes hears her thoughts. From that moment on, she thought specifically about animals, songs, and hunger, but it seemed that such thoughts did not reach him. The guy watches her with a questioning look, and the lady puzzles over what the pattern is. She remembers how the blonde man spoke of strange voices, and the knight suspected dangerous spells and demanded confessions. Kim Ji-ja replied that there was no magic, and perhaps it was all about her pure and fair heart. She mentally asked them both to be simpler, because she herself did not understand what was happening. Then the girl decided to figure out what thoughts he was able to hear, and again turned to Kyle. Noticing that the knight was reaching for his sword, she immediately addressed him as His Highness. She said that he felt as if he was not hearing all the voices of her soul, and the knight asked why she thought that. Looking at the red-haired young man, Kim Ji-ja realizes that his gaze alone is capable of sending shivers down her spine. She replies that if they could hear absolutely all her thoughts, then the entire royal family would have been hunting for her. Kim Ji-ja notices that even Kyle's smile makes him incredibly cute, and the knight immediately tells her to watch her face. The girl complains that her arms are numb, and carefully asks if the ropes could be loosened a little. She reminds him that she has no weapons, and His Highness agrees, shocking the knight. The blonde explains that he wants to test something, and they begin experimenting with his ability. The main character understands that there is no progress and wonders whether she will be given a free hand today. Looking up, she notices that the blonde man is looking straight at her. She thinks he's dazzling, and it's sad she doesn't have a camera to capture that image forever. She thinks that it would be worthwhile to call the court artist, and dreams of kissing his eyes when he closes them. Kyle becomes embarrassed and asks her to wait, saying that this is too much. But the girl's thoughts continue to race, and she catches herself glancing at his figure from behind. She thinks he is divine and angelically beautiful, and if beauty is a sin, then he is guaranteed punishment. His Highness calls out to Kim Ji-ja, and she immediately asks how much he heard. The guy just clarifies the meaning of the word, and the girl understands that he really heard all this, calling it an ancient work. She explains that they dig up the criminal and behead him, and Kyle realizes he shouldn't have asked. He decides that the lady wants the same for him, and that she might be an assassin, but Kim Ji-ja immediately denies it. The blonde notices that her words sounded like a confession, as if he deserved it. The girl is indignant, but at that moment there is a knock on the door, and the guy says that it looks like the time has come. The main character is scared, thinking that she will now be sent to prison. She has so much she wants to tell him, and she wonders if it's time to leave this story. She realizes that someone has come, and Benji couldn't have returned so quickly. A picture comes to mind of her being taken away by knights and sentenced to be burned. She thinks in horror that she does not want to fall into eternal sleep again. The blonde man notices her anxiety, and outside the door, the maid addresses His Highness. The guy goes out and finds out that Princess Sienna is calling him for breakfast. The maid thought she heard someone else's voice. The guy clutches his heart and asks if he's talking about breakfast. He agrees and asks to tell her that he will come soon, and the maid leaves. The blonde man closes the door, and the main character thanks him with relief. He says that now they will not be disturbed and takes a dagger out of his pocket. Kim Ji-ja, shocked, asks why he hid it if he had it from the very beginning. The guy approaches, and the girl closes her eyes, but he only cuts the ropes on her hands. She recalls that she was promised a free hand if she passed the test. The girl feels the blood returning and complains that her hands are cramping. The blonde takes her palms and offers to see what's wrong with them. Kim Ji-ja thinks how kind he is, but the guy asks her to stop thinking like that. She asks if he heard it again, admitting that he doesn't understand anything. The lady suggests that he hears her when she thinks about him, and the guy says that everything can be seen on her face. She wonders how she can even control her facial expression around Kyle. Deciding to be careful, she agrees, and the guy says that he is going to change his clothes. The main character hurries him and thinks that it will be something incredible. She's already imagining it, but the blonde tells her to turn away immediately, and she obeys. Kim Ji-ja realizes that even when he's embarrassed, he looks charming. Feeling hungry, she asks if she can take her with her for breakfast. The guy replies that only members of the imperial family are allowed there, and she becomes jealous. She imagines a royal breakfast and thinks it looks like a luxurious buffet. Suddenly, she hears him talking about how sad it is to not be part of the family. The girl wonders who said this, because the maid had already left. Sienna is the third princess of Debiltion, and it was believed that the throne would go to her older brother. They mercilessly eliminated everyone in their path, and later wanted to plunge the black-eyed prince into eternal sleep. Sienna usually ignores Kyle, but the way she plays with her food is unforgivable. She put poison in Kyle's side dish, and he had trouble eating breakfast for days. The main character understands that she must tell him the truth. She immediately turns to His Highness. The guy, who hasn't changed yet, is embarrassed and indignant, and the girl apologizes with a smile. Meanwhile, the princess prepares the poisoned side dish, confident that everything is going perfectly. After a while, Kim Ji-ja thinks again how great Kyle is. It seems to her that his breath alone heals better than any vitamins. All that matters to her is being close, but the guy tries to remain distant. He says that he hears everything and asks her to stop, and the girl thinks how difficult it is not to spy. She agrees, wishing she could hear his thoughts. Kim Ji-ja asks why he hid her presence. And why didn't you call security? Because she looks suspicious. The guy replies that the empire has its own laws, even if he doesn't know where it came from. You cannot accuse a person without evidence and identification. The girl realizes that she didn't notice this in the novel. She says that she was wrong to think badly about the Middle Ages. But the blonde doesn't understand what she's talking about. The main character brushes it off and says that she won't become a criminal because of the bedroom. She emphasizes that she has no weapon, and that she is the one who suffered. If she were an assassin or a witch, someone would have already fallen into eternal sleep, and Kyle remarks that she is too innocent. Kim Ji-ja thinks he is a real angel, and his face is stunning. She calls him a walking hotness bomb, and the guy demands he stop. Sighing, he admits that the lady is not dangerous, although a little scary. The girl thinks with relief that it's good that he just thinks she's weird. She realizes that if this is not a dream, then she really is in the Grey Cardinal, and she still has time before the tragic end of his fate. Maybe she can change it. And the blonde says he'll be back soon. The lady asks him to wait a second and addresses him as His Highness. She asks if he will have breakfast with just his family and asks him not to eat the side dishes. After them, his mouth would dry out and he would feel ill for several days. The guy, shocked, asks how she knows this, and she blames Sienna. He looks at her in surprise, and the girl realizes that she has said too much. Kyle says she's overstepping her bounds by mentioning the princess. He remarks that for such words he could plunge her into eternal sleep. But the girl thinks about his beauty again and immediately pulls herself together. Kim Ji-ja speaks carefully about Princess Sienna, knowing that he is angry. But for Kyle, she is ready to do anything because Isaac will soon return to the palace. She'll still help the boy after all because she's going to expose Sienna's conspiracy. But she can't bear to watch Kyle suffer for even a day, so he'll have to listen to what she has to say. Kim Ji-ja insists that His Highness amuses himself by poisoning his food. The poison is very small, added to the side dish, but His Highness always feels ill afterwards, so she asks him not to touch the side dish. The guy is surprised and asks how she knows all this if she's not a spy. Kim Ji-ja realizes how suspicious this sounds and doesn't even know what to say. But the guy says that to some extent, he himself guessed that the princess was up to something. Even knowing this, he still had to endure it. He falls silent for a moment, and the main character becomes lost in thought. She felt it was genuine self-abasement and wanted to say that there was no need to act so cold-bloodedly. The lady understands that Kyle is too innocent, like a true national treasure that must be protected. If his health is undermined with poisons, his beauty will suffer as well, and she will not allow that and will do everything in her power. Yes, her intervention will deprive the other prince of his chance to help Kyle, but that's okay. There are still plenty of opportunities for them to become close friends, especially since there's still time before the black-eyed prince arrives. And the girl almost shouts at His Highness that that he can't eat side dishes. The lady looks at him pleadingly. The guy sighs and says that when she thinks of him as innocent and graceful, her words sound completely unconvincing. Kim Ji-ja silently complains about her thoughts and considers these abilities terribly stupid. The guy says it's too late and he has to go. He also promises to find out how she knows about the side dishes when he gets back. He leaves, slamming the door. The protagonist sighs and wonders if she really thought that out loud. Then she looks around and realizes that she is in her favorite person's room, which means she should examine every corner. A guy with red hair walks down the hallway and thinks about how much power this girl has. Since he is still in pain, he realizes that he has contacted all the guilds but has not found a single person like her. Suddenly, the young man hears a scream and realizes that it is coming from somewhere in the direction of His Highness's room. At this time, the prince is sitting at the table with members of the imperial family, and someone notices that his complexion is unhealthy. They immediately ask him if he has any pain, but the guy replies that he just didn't sleep well. This woman is Priscilla de Biltion, the first empress. She immediately asks why this happened. Someone adds that since he is sick, he shouldn't have come. It seems he came for him, so he apologizes. This young man is the second prince, named Heron. He says it would be disrespectful not to come. The blonde gets angry and clutches the knife in his hands, but quickly pulls himself together. He says he couldn't miss his younger brother's birthday anyway. Someone laughs and says that otherwise there would be nothing to do here, and is glad that his brother came after all. The girl asks if he is still shining today, especially his blue eyes, which look like the deepest lakes. The blonde sighs and wonders if they are tired of this meaningless pattern. At one moment, they talk about lakes in the eyes. At another, that the first prince was not red-eyed at all. The guy remembers Kim Jae-ja's words about Sienna being like a dog and realizes how different the princess is from this girl. For several days now, while eating breakfast with them, he had been experiencing pain, intestinal problems, and a burning sensation in his mouth. But he could not refuse, fearing rumors. As the young man reaches for food, he remembers the lady's words about side dishes. He pushes them aside, and at that moment someone addresses him. He is asked if he has no appetite at all and if his stomach hurts. The guy removes the side dish and starts eating the meat, saying that because of the bad sleep, everything seems tasteless. He apologizes and asks not to ruin Heron's birthday. At this point, the girl pierces the meat with a fork. A little later, the guy finishes his meal and realizes that today there is no burning sensation in his mouth. He remembers the lady's request again and wonders how she knows all this. Sometime later, the young man is already training and is hitting a dummy. He decides to rest and realizes that he got tired too quickly, probably due to a sleepless night. It's all because of that girl. He picks up his bag and realizes he'll have to change his schedule. At this point, someone asks why he trains so hard and goes to classes every day. After all, no matter how hard you try, he will still remain just the blue star of Biltion. The green-haired lady asks what it's about. The princess replies that she was just thinking about how hard her brother is trying and how he's shining. The imperial family is called the Son of Biltion, and the brother is called the Blue Star. The lady says it sounds beautiful, and the blonde agrees. But then the question arises whether the sun and stars can exist together. The girl smiles and says that it's not that important, but her interlocutor doesn't know what to answer. The blonde understands that behind this nickname lies the fact that he will never lead the empire. She leaves the others, determined to understand the reason. The blonde returns to the mansion and realizes that he is tired and could not concentrate on the next lesson. There was silence all morning, which means the girl sat silently all this time. As he's about to open the door, a knight comes out and announces that His Highness has returned. Kyle asks if Benji has learned anything about Kinjin-za. He hears in response that no one in the palace has seen a girl with gray hair. She's too conspicuous, so the blonde is surprised and asks about the guild's mercenaries. The red-haired youth says that even the informants have not heard of the voting mercenary. The blonde man asks if this means that no one hired her in the capital and asks what Kinjin-za is doing now. The knight doesn't know what to answer. He heard a scream a few hours earlier. He realized that the sound was coming from His Highness's room and immediately ran there. He saw a lady with a pillow over her face and for a moment wondered if this was a scene of her falling into eternal sleep. He ripped off the pillow, but the girl only smiled and talked about Kyle. The redhead claims that she spent the whole day admiring the gentleman's portrait, drooling and sitting on his chair for a long time. The blonde asks him to stop and thinks, realizing that he has never encountered such people before. The main character stands in front of the mirror and removes the bandages, noticing that the bleeding has stopped and the wound is not deep. No matter how real the dream was, the cut didn't hurt, and she wondered if she had reincarnated after falling into eternal sleep. Or it's an illness, but it doesn't matter, because Kyle is nearby. She will cope, but at that moment someone turns to her, and the girl wonders if he has really come. She sees her favorite, and thinks that next to such a person, it no longer matters whether it is an illness or a resurrection. In her past life, everything revolved around rent, utilities, and overtime, so she's happy with everything. Besides, she really likes Kyle. The guy asks if she really doesn't know what shame is. He reminds her how many times he asked her not to call him by his name, and the heroine is surprised. but he still turns to His Highness and asks if the breakfast was tasty. The guy smiles and says that thanks to her, his throat doesn't burn today. He would soon find out how she knew everything, so let her not talk nonsense about falling from heaven and knowing everything. The girl asks if he is talking about an angel who descended from heaven, but the young man repeats that he will find out everything. She remembers that since childhood, princes have mysteriously fallen into eternal sleep and understands that he did not want to see her as a mercenary. Kyle says he has no reason to put her in prison, but he can't let her go either. In such a situation, he offers to tell her what to do next. He offers to work at the palace until further notice. The girl clarifies and happily agrees. She is happy and thinks that she will be next to Kyle every day, and she really likes it. The guy sighs and reaches out to stroke her head, but she suddenly looks up. She realizes she needs to be careful with her thoughts. The blonde man coughs and says he's going crazy, then asks Benji to find a job for Kim Jin-ji in the palace. A little later, the heroine asks Mr. Benji where he is going, and hears that he is going to look for a job. She asks if the prince always sleeps with a dagger, in case someone tries to put him into eternal sleep. The redhead replies that yes, in case a spy like her breaks in. The girl almost cries, saying that the poor prince sleeps so poorly and is so tired, and promises to protect him until the end of her days. She asks how old he will be this year, and the men are surprised at what she named him. Kim Jin-ja asks Mr. Benji not to be so serious as she didn't mean anything bad. She says that if she calls His Highness by name, she will disturb his rest. He will hear her voice. The boy replies that if that's the case, His Highness mustn't be inconvenienced. The heroine agrees, but the young man has already moved on. She wonders why this guy turns away when someone smiles. He says that His Highness will be turning 21 this year. He graduated from the academy early and regularly attends extracurricular activities. Those who don't understand anything call him a blue star and say that he will not become emperor. But the knights are sure that he doesn't think so, and the girl asks why. The guy replies that there is no one who is as worried about the empire as His Highness. Kim Jin-ja clenches her fists and says that she completely agrees. In her thoughts, she adds that he lived for the empire until the very end, but now this will not happen. The red-haired man says that this is the first time he has heard the name, Kim Jin-ja. He jokes that her name is very complicated and that she might be from Thailand, and then asks how she knows about the prince and himself. The prince is busy right now, so he decides to leave her alone. The main character notices that this guy is starting to get irritated again. She knows it would be better to remain silent, but she still turns to Mr. Benji. The girl says she considers him a truly good man. Her heart beats faster because she sees how much he strives for His Highness. Even far away, she already knew of his loyalty and strength of spirit. She also understands that Benji is susceptible to praise. Living among people and constantly working, she learned to be easygoing, funny, and unobtrusive. In her mind, she apologizes to the author Eminence Grease for previously complaining about the slow development of the plot due to scenes like these. The red-haired young man says that it's not that difficult, and as soon as they find out who she is, they can send her back. The heroine understands that he won't ask anything more about her, and even if he did, she has nothing to say, because there's only one way back. She doesn't know whether she has fallen into an eternal sleep, or whether she, like many others, was hit by a huge truck. Before falling, she lost consciousness and woke up inside the novel. Kim Jin-ja realizes that the prince is now 21 years old, and everything happens before the black-eyed prince returns to the palace. So there's a chance to buy time and strengthen Kyle's position. She forces herself to remain calm and resolves that she won't allow him to live and fall into eternal sleep alone. The boy turns to Madame Tully and realizes that she is the governess at Kyle's palace. The woman greets them and asks how she can help. The young man explains that he is responsible for the girl and inquires if there is any work for her. Madame Tully says she needs someone to clean His Highness's personal library. The previous employee is leaving for her homeland and plans to take up farming. She's surprised at how quickly they found a replacement and asks the girl's name. The guy is about to answer, but the heroine punches him in the stomach with her fist. She doesn't want to be called Kim Jin-ja here, and is frantically searching for a cute name. Something simple and easy to pronounce. She remembers someone once addressing Josephine. Kim Jin-ja realizes that this name will suit her best and calls herself Josephine. She adds that, as a commoner, she doesn't have a surname. The woman smiles and says that was her grandmother's name, so it must be fate. The girl silently thinks that even dog names sound more refined. Then, Madame Tully asks if Josephine can read. The heroine looks at the paper and honestly answers that she doesn't know how. The redhead is surprised, and the woman says that without the ability to read, there is no suitable work. Kim Jin-ja claims that she is good at physical labor and hopes that she will not be expelled from the palace. She understands that outside the palace, there will be almost no chance to be close to Kyle. The woman says there is no work for Josephine, but there are vacancies for men. The heroine is surprised, and soon they are walking down the corridor. She asks Benji if there is a spare room and if he can bring some other clothes. He's surprised and asks why. The girl replies that she needs to get this job at all costs. The young man jokes that she really does look like a spy, but she says that she just wants to be near His Highness and make him happy. If there is no woman's work, she agrees to do men's work and dress as a man. The guy is shocked, and she lists that it is either carrying water or cutting down trees, or carry suitcases to the carts, and she is ready for it. She hurries him and asks him to bring any men's clothing. The guy stops, turns around, and makes a remark. He says she called him by his first name again. Kim Jin-ja apologizes and asks him to take it easy. After a while, he brings the clothes and says that this is all he found. The girl thanks him. The young man admits that the idea seems reckless to him, and he wants to offer His Highness another option. But the heroine says that it is important to stay in the palace, to be close to Kyle. She notices that the situation is changing, because Kyle, who never smiles, smiled at her several times today. She seems to be able to make him smile more often. She asks Benji to trust her. The guy gets embarrassed and turns away, and the girl doesn't understand why. He himself thinks that he has fallen under the influence of a strange spell. Kim Jin-ja asks what happened, and then asks if he has a knife. She asks to borrow it. The guy is surprised. He says he can't give the blade to someone who isn't trained. Then she asks him to help her cut something off, and he asks what exactly. The girl replies that it's hair, and thinks how sad all the effort spent on grooming in her past life is. But for Kyle, she's ready to do anything. Her hair will grow back anyway, so it doesn't matter to her. The guy asks if it's necessary. He's never cut anyone's hair before, but the heroine just screams. She grabs him and says that it would be easier to give him the knife, but he replies that the knight will not give up the blade. He eventually agrees. The girl asks that her hair be divided into 3 sections and that it be cut, not perfectly straight like the commoners. Taking her hair, the young man says that it resembles the Milky Way. Kim Jin-ja asks again, but he waves it off. He says it's just the color of clear river water, and the girl finds it strange. As he is about to cut off the strand, the heroine screams and twitches. She is indignant at how one can suddenly poke a knife. The young man freezes with a lock of hair in his hands, and the girl understands that this is trouble. He cuts off too much hair, and she screams at Benjamin. The guy apologizes and asks if she was hurt. Kim Jin-ja sighs and says that it's just a shame, but asks to continue along this line. Benji asks if she's going to take revenge, and she replies that it's just hair. To be near the prince, this is nothing. The servant says that it is difficult to think deceitfully around someone you like. Kim Jin-ja replies that he is too quick to turn people into perverts. He grumbles that she's going too far and reminds her that he already apologized for the haircut. He asks not to call him by name in front of others so as not to cause problems. The girl agrees and promises to be more careful. She realizes that Benji is being too talkative, as if trying to relieve tension. After a while, he reports that he is finished. Kim Jin-ja realizes that there is no mirror in the room. She asks how she looks, then changes her clothes and wraps her chest with bandages. The girl asks if it looks plausible, but the guy just turns away. He says that, generally speaking, yes, and she notices that his face has turned very red. The young man says that if she is ready, they can go. The heroine doesn't understand his reaction. Later, Benjamin introduces her as Josephine's younger twin brother. The woman is surprised and asks what his name is. The girl understands that she now needs a male name, but she doesn't know which one. The knight says his name is Joe. The heroine looks at him in surprise. He meets her gaze, and she realizes it is her name. Kim Jin-ja agrees and says her name is Joe. Her parents were too lazy to come up with different names. Common people are all like that, she thinks. But she still worries. The woman smiles and says that this is great. The boy is relieved to realize they haven't been discovered. The head maid continues talking. She informs him that from tomorrow he will be responsible for the stables. The heroine finally understands what they're talking about. The woman explains that a guy used to work there. He ran away under the strain, and it would be a good thing if Joe didn't do the same. There is a servant's house next to the stables, and it is better to spend the night there. The horses belong to His Majesty and must be looked after carefully. He is obliged to report illnesses and notice even small things like poor appetite. She's busy, so she asks if everything's clear. The heroine smiles and says she loves horses. Soon she goes with the knight and realizes that this is better than cleaning or polishing carriages. Working in the stables doesn't require a uniform, which is a plus. Benji points to the building ahead. He says it's time for him to go, and if anything happens, he should contact the barracks or the office. The girl agrees. He adds about the name Joe, but the heroine interrupts and asks him to call her that in front of others. The names Kim Jin Ja or Josephine will arouse suspicion. The boy falls silent for a moment. Then he nods, says he understands, says goodbye, and asks not to cause problems. The heroine is left alone and realizes that she is truly on her own now. She decides to adapt and avoid making mistakes. After a while, she sees scattered hay and droppings on the floor. And then there were the evil horses, which is why the girl is genuinely surprised and begins to doubt whether she is really in the Imperial stables now. She wonders if there is too much work here and turns around, noticing that same house. That's where she's supposed to spend the night. At that moment, one of the horses snorts loudly, and the heroine decides she'll just have to endure it. If this is for His Highness, who looks like a rabbit or a fox, then everything is fine. Compared to the endless overtime in my previous life, this really is nothing. The girl approaches the horses, introduces herself to Joe, and declares that from this day on she will feed them and clean the stable. One of the horses suddenly licks her, and the lady only smiles sadly, realizing that this is how her daily life as an imperial groom begins. She says that now they are acquainted and decides to gradually get down to business. The girl takes a shovel and understands that she will have to start by cleaning up the manure. She notices that it's already sunset and decides to at least clean this up and then go to bed. But once she goes inside and sees the whole picture, she feels sick. She thinks that even if this is a novel, the smell here feels just like in reality. It occurs to her to put a straw up her nose, but at that moment, someone comes up from behind and asks who she is. The girl turns around, wishes the man good evening, and says that her name is Joe. She adds that she is working in the stables from today, but her interlocutor has doubts. He said Joe didn't look like the type to do the job, although there weren't enough hands anyway, so that was a good thing. The man's name is Rick. He is a local gardener and suggests calling him by his first name. The heroine thinks this is convenient. Rick says they need to eat first, and Joe hopefully asks if that's true since she's terribly hungry. But the man clarifies that it is not he who needs to eat, but the horses, since they are the ones who are cared for first and foremost. He adds that even if he sells the guy, there won't be enough money for a horse's tail, continuing to teach her with sarcastic jokes. Rick says he'll train them thoroughly, so Joe should listen carefully. The first order of business is feeding the horses. They need to be brushed and combed every day. By the end of the work, the girl can barely stand. But the man just grumbles why the guy is so slow. Because he is still young, and it is only the first day. Joe realizes there will be no gentle training, and it is now clear why the previous employee ran away. At this point, Rick shouts out whether the guy is even listening to him, since he still needs to learn the names of all the horses. He asks if Joe would like it if his name was constantly mistaken, and the heroine realizes that this has happened to her more than once. She promises to write everything down and begins writing down the horses' names in Korean. Rick, watching this, understands that this is a real disaster and cannot imagine how such a person was sent to the stables. Apparently, Miss Tilly is having a really hard time finding workers right now. The man pats Joe on the shoulder and says that it is already evening and it is time to go eat. He adds that you need to eat well, otherwise you won't be able to work at full capacity. The heroine thinks that although he is harsh, he is still caring and not such a bad person. True, if this guy starts picking on her again, the novel's genre could suddenly change to a thriller. Later, she lies in bed and remembers a dinner of corn porridge and one potato. She has to sleep in a dilapidated hut, and without crazy love, she definitely wouldn't have been able to endure it. But from here, she can see the night sky, and looking at the stars, she thinks about Kyle. It is also called The Blue Star of Biltion, and she remembers reading a novel at this time. She gets out of bed and wonders if she should send a message about what happened to her. Thinking about her sweet Kyle and Kim Jin Ja, she decides that it's still hard for him to pronounce that name, so let him call her Kim Jin Ja. The girl wonders if she can hear that very masterpiece created by a god named Kyle. She mentally says that she is in the stable and let him come there at any moment. If he gets bored, she will be waiting. Realizing that he must be tired, she stops sending signals and wishes him good dreams. After this, the girl wonders whether the message has been received, because she cannot see his reaction. If only Benji were here, she'd feel better. She lies back down and decides that since the message has been sent, it's time to sleep. She hopes she doesn't wake up in the real world, and if this is a dream, she doesn't want to leave it. After some time, the heroine enters the stable again and wishes the horses good morning. She calls them all by name and soon returns to cleaning up the manure. The girl realizes that, fortunately, it was not a dream, and she did not return to the real world. It's her job, so she decides not to be lazy and to try her best. She thinks that over time, Kyle might start to trust her, and then she will show him Korean willpower. 3 whole months pass, but neither Kyle nor Benji return. The heroine begins to wonder if this is the end. She muses that if the story ends here, the manhwa will be weird. At that moment, Rick calls Joe and suggests they stop suffering and go to lunch. He says the guy is doing well, and his shoulders have noticeably broadened. The girl replies with a smile that it couldn't be otherwise, and realizes that a month has already passed. She has become completely accustomed to working in the stables and to her new name. Although it was difficult, over time the work began to bring pleasure. The people in the palace began to treat her more kindly, and she quickly became close to the other servants. Later, one of the ladies tells Joe that she heard that he had a fight with Rick yesterday, and today they are having lunch together. The heroine replies that since she's stuck here, Rick is her only friend. The man immediately tugs at her hand and grumbles that he's just babysitting Joe. The girl realizes that she has accidentally gotten used to everything, and no one still suspects that she is a girl. She says Rick should be happy to have such a young and cool friend. Later, while working, she notices that this has its advantages. Daily work couldn't help but strengthen her body. She grew taller, stronger, and suddenly realized she hadn't sent a message to Kyle today. She starts thinking about him, mentally calling his name and asking him to visit her today. The girl understands that he is very busy, but still misses him and asks him to at least send Benji. She thinks Kyle simply has to come since she can't leave on her own, or maybe he should send an album with his beautiful color photos. At least this way she will be able to admire him, and when she starts to get lazy, she will immediately remember this. She thinks he'll get angry and fire her on the spot. And that's the whole difference between the working class and the aristocracy. The girl admits she really misses her handsome Kyle. Meanwhile, the guy chokes on his tea. The maid immediately asks His Highness if everything is all right. He replies that it is, and the heroine, at that moment, sobs internally from how stylishly she misses him. When she thinks of him again, a smile appears on her face, and she seems like a real clown, just to get him to come. The blonde realizes that this girl is clearly crazy. He looks out the window and realizes that even though she is far away, her voice can be heard all too clearly. And there is no nightmare more terrible than this. She's probably there, dancing her crazy dances, waving a rake. At this moment, the heroine does just that, praising Kyle's golden hair and dreaming of marrying him. She screams that he has golden hair, she has silver hair, and their child will be something in between. The blonde is embarrassed and wants her to stop immediately. Kyle has no idea what Kim Jin-ja is planning, so he leaves her in the imperial castle and secretly watches, fearing that she might be up to something or run away. After receiving the surveillance report, he learns that she sings songs while cleaning the stables. She gets angry at the black horse, who eats only fresh grass, quarrels with Rick on the way to breakfast, hits him on the head, kicks him, and runs away. After eating, she cuts her hand on rice straw and goes to collect hay in the backyard of the palace. She brings an overflowing cart and, together with other workers, pulls out a wagon stuck in the mud. The blonde man wonders if it was this worker who pulled the cart. He realizes that he has placed watchers on Joe, but has not learned anything useful. He thinks that maybe she really isn't a spy, watching her every day. She seems to be incredibly stubborn since no one has yet realized that she is a girl, and perhaps she is a real professional. At this moment, he again hears her thoughts, where she insists that he is a groom and that golden hair color suits only her Kyle. She dreams of falling into eternal sleep in his tight embrace. Kyle wants her to stop, assuming she's making noise because he's not coming. He orders his servant to bring pen and ink, and he immediately carries out the order. After a while, one of the servants goes to the stable and asks if it is in this direction. He remembers that the master ordered the letter to be delivered to a guy named Joe, who works in the stables. The butler wonders who this Joe is, since His Highness himself writes letters to him. At that moment, he hears someone speaking kindly to the horse and assuring him that he had just fed it fresh grass. She calls the horse a bad girl, and the servant approaches the boy, asking if his name is Joe. The heroine turns around and confirms that her name is Jo. The man, looking at her, is delighted. The girl comes closer and asks if he has business with her. The man thinks what a handsome young man he is and says that this letter is from His Highness himself and needs to be read now. Kim Jin-ja clarifies whether the letter is really from Kyle, takes it in his hands, and says with relief that finally. But then she droops and admits that she is very grateful, but she cannot read. She has no one to ask for help, so she turns to this man. She asks if he could read the letter. The man asks only that he not tell anyone, lest they think he's secretly reading the royal mail. The heroine promises that she will not cause him any problems. The man begins to read the letter. Kyle writes that he understands perfectly well what Jo likes. The servant thinks about this and decides not to retell this line to the guy. The heroine asks what is written there, and the man almost cries, thinking what a poor guy Jo is. A few days later, the blonde asks if the letter was delivered and receives an affirmative answer. Kyle realizes that even after everything, Jo continues to pray for a new meeting with him. This thought makes him feel like it's easier to keep her close. But he immediately understands that this is impossible, otherwise his ears will literally fall off. He hands the servant another letter and tells him to deliver it today, making sure Jo reads it. The man apologizes, but says that he cannot give such a letter to this child. The blonde is shocked and doesn't understand why this is happening. At that moment, Benji offers to take over as butler. Kyle says it's just a letter, but there's no one else to go. He wonders why things are turning out this way, and Benji realizes that Kim Jin-ja has a knack for charming people. Once you meet her, people immediately take her side, believing her every word. In fact, Benji just wants to deliver a letter and has been missing Jo for a long time. He decides to go himself. Kyle agrees and sends him to the stables. When the heroine notices Benji, she addresses him by name, and he reminds her of Mr. Benji. Kim Jin-ja replies that there is no one around and does not see a problem. She adds that he cut off all her hair and then immediately scolds the horse Melissa for eating in the wrong place. Benji says she's clearly gotten used to life in the stables, and the girl proudly shows off her new muscles. She asks him how he likes her short hair. The young man becomes embarrassed and turns away, and she is surprised by such a reaction. Benji quips that she should wear a hat to cover the faces of such freaks. Kim Jin-ja laughs and says that with such a character, he is clearly not popular with girls. She asks why he came, and the guy replies that he brought a letter. The girl is surprised and reminds him that he is a knight and the right hand of His Highness. Wasting such talent on delivering letters is a waste. Benji thanks him, but says the servants refuse to go to the stables. Kim Jin-ja doesn't believe it, and Benji asks why. She replies that Pell and Tommy came to see her recently, bringing food and a blanket. They were worried that she would freeze, and yesterday they even had fun together. The guy understands that they came on their own business, but did not bring the letter, and the problem is clearly in him. The heroine hands him the letter and asks him to read it, because she herself does not know how. Benji reads. In the letter, Kyle asks Jo to stop thinking about him so much. He writes that it gives him a headache. The girl immediately asks what it says. She hates it when people drag out their reading. Benji says the meaning is the same as before. He explains that His Highness is tired and asked her to think less about him. Kim Jin-ja is surprised and realizes she's doing this out of habit. Benji asks what she told him. She replies that in the next life, she wants to become the lips of His Highness. This way she would be able to kiss anyway. Benji says it's actually quite restrained, and the girl completely agrees. She says she sends messages from the heart and trembles every time. The girl asks if Kyle really hears everything. The knight replies that it seems so, even the most obscene. The heroine is shocked, and Benji thinks what a poor fellow His Highness is. At that moment, one of the horses screams, and the girl says that it is Dieppe again. She panics because if she loses him, she will be put into eternal sleep. Benji shouts at her to stop, as chasing the horse is useless. But she doesn't listen and goes to Dieppe, persuading him to be a good boy. Before she can finish speaking, she notices the horse looming over her. The next moment, she is already on the ground, and Benji is above her. The girl asks what happened, because she almost got run over. Dieppe approaches again, and the knight leads her aside. Getting up, he shouts that she almost fell into eternal sleep and calls her an idiot. He asks how she could just stand there, and she doesn't understand why he's so angry. The girl sharply replies that yes, she is like that, and she was scared too. Benji says anything could have happened to her, and she shrugs. He pauses and says that for His Highness's safety, she should be more careful. Kim Jin-ja counters that it was Dieppe who nearly knocked her down. The guy replies that this is exactly why she should be careful, and then the girl feels pain in her ankle. She falls right onto Benji's chest. He is surprised and confused, asking what's wrong with her. At that moment, Kyle runs out from behind the tree and freezes at what he sees. Benji says the lady startled him, and the girl immediately apologizes. A servant approaches His Highness. He informs him that His Imperial Majesty is looking for him. Kyle replies that he will be right there. A little later, he stands before the Empress and asks if she called him. The woman invites him to sit down and asks if he remembers Bernard Hestine. Kyle replies that he met him as a child, when he was the feudal lord of Hestine. Now Sir Bernard is a duke, and the Empress says he is worth visiting. Kyle is shocked and asks if Lorraine has fallen into eternal sleep. The woman replies that she lived a long life. Lorraine wanted to hand Hestine over to him, but the lands are still in other hands, and now Bernard has become the duke. Kyle realizes he needs to go and meet the new owner. He asks if Bernard's loyalty needs to be tested, and the Empress says that Hestine has joined the Wellowists. She laughs, imagining Kyle returning with Hestine, whom the previous emperor failed to keep. If Kyle becomes emperor, Bernard will have to be given at least a post. Kyle reminds him that he is Biltion and his mother is Velois. The woman coldly replies, making him think about who it is, thanks to him, that he even lives in this palace. Kyle remembers begging her for help as a child, afraid that Jimenez would put him into an eternal sleep. Now she asks who he is. She says that he is the son of the Veloists and the Biltians, and asks who he is here. And he adds that if he had been a hindrance, he should have been put into eternal sleep while still a baby. Many families support them, and they don't have time to act slowly. After all, he will become emperor. At this moment, the heroine screams. Benji says she seems to be injured. Kim Ji-ja asks her not to speak in that tone. The guy remains silent and bends down to her ankle. The girl screams, worried about what they will think if someone sees. Benji replies that if she's afraid of people's looks, she should stop calling him by his name. She realizes that she is indeed continuing to do this and becomes embarrassed. She suddenly feels like her feet smell. Benji asks to look at her swollen ankle. It's huge, and the girl says she pulled it hard. She remembers that it happened when they were dodging a horse. Seeing Benji's expression, she thinks about the smell again, and he says that the stable is a dangerous place. Kim Jin-ja replies that it's just an unlucky day. The guy objects that one cannot be sure that this will not happen again. The girl wonders why he's being so proper today. Benji tells her to bandage her leg tightly and not overexert herself. He believes that the bones are intact and everything will heal, and she agrees. Then she remembers about the horses, but Benji sits her back down and says that he will feed them himself. He's used to keeping an eye on his horse's hay and can handle it. She's injured, so she should at least rest today. When he leaves, the girl thinks that Benji is really worried about her. She smiles and decides that he is very cute. He acts caring and doesn't argue, even though he looks older. In fact, she was like an older sister in terms of age, but she was not interested in anyone except Kyle. After some time, Benji returns, says that he cannot leave his post for long, and says goodbye until tomorrow. Kim Jin-ja agrees and laughs, asking why he is such a bore, like an old man. At that very moment, the girl is hit on the head, and she screams, not believing that he just did that. Benji replies that he only hit her lightly, and as he is about to leave, he asks her to stop talking nonsense. He tells her to eat well and get well soon. Kim Ji-ja thinks this man must have gotten hurt too, but she doesn't understand why he's acting so strange. Before leaving for good, Benji turns around several times. After a short while, the heroine sits up on the bed and realizes that she is indeed seriously injured. She notices the pain in her leg and realizes how unpleasant it is, and misses Kyle even more. The girl becomes sad and thinks that it would be better to be reborn as a mirror in his room so that she can see him every day. Kim Ji-ja is embarrassed by this thought and immediately wonders if it sounds too strange. Then she decides that since Togo is nearby, he still doesn't hear anything like that. She understands that Benji has done all the work so she can go to bed early today. After some time, the heroine hears footsteps near the stable. She wonders who could have come so late and thinks about Rick, but remembers that he promised to return tomorrow. Not understanding who it is, she goes outside and takes a shovel with her. Peeking around the corner, the girl realizes that it is not Rick, and the thought of a robber or an assassin flashes through her head. She thinks that if she were okay, she would have caught him long ago and given him to the horse. But now she is in too much pain. The girl decides that whoever the stranger is, she still misses Kyle terribly. And at that very moment, the guy seems to hear this and turns around. Kim Jim-ja is shocked because he is walking straight towards her, and she doesn't understand how he knew she was there. At the same moment, the guy says that she said it herself because she admitted that she misses him. Some time ago, after talking with Her Majesty, he returned to his room. He remembered the woman's words and understood that she was right, because without his mother, he would have been dead long ago. Just like his brothers and sisters. A memory of childhood came flooding back, including a 3-year-old half-brother who had fallen into eternal sleep after drowning in a pond. He was there with the servants, and it looked like an accident, but he asked for an investigation. No one listened to him, and the emperor spoke to him coldly and distantly. The man said he was busy and suggested they talk later. The young man left and waited to be called back, but he was never summoned until Andrew's funeral. Having lost her son, the empress committed suicide. The emperor quickly filled the voids with a new reality. And already the following year, Jimenez slowly sank into eternal sleep after drinking poison. He found his mother when he was small and innocent, and it was she who stood by his side. The woman then asked the boy who he was, and he replied that he was Kyle de Biltion. She confirmed this and said that he was the emperor's son and the first prince in line to the throne. So what's the problem if Jimenez has fallen into an eternal sleep? Because sadness passes with time. Let him remember that fame will bring much more pleasure. Then he never dared to ask about anything. He didn't ask if she had put poison in Jimenez's food, and a week later she fell into an eternal sleep. The funeral took place in the palace according to all the rules, and everything repeated itself as if in a circle, and only the mother was truly in pain. Suddenly, the thought occurred to him whether his mother would be sad if he himself plunged into eternal sleep. And if he cannot live as a crown prince and becomes useless, will God not send him the same end? He thought that if he had red eyes, he would be loved more sincerely. At that time, people were whispering that Princess Jimenez and Prince Kyle were getting along well. Some said that despite his young age, the first prince already possessed a pride worthy of his status, while the second prince was still without power. Others wondered if it was due to age, since Veluisa's influence was stronger. The boy understood that he was destined to be emperor, even if he doesn't want it. For his mother and others, he is just a tool. The young man realized that he should not drown in memories, because this was not befitting a future emperor. He thought that if he did not become emperor, there would be no one left who would love him. And suddenly he hears the thoughts of a lady who is really sick and in pain, and who misses Kyle. The girl thinks how sad it is and again imagines that she could become a mirror in his room. Then she would see him every day, but she immediately wonders if that sounds strange. She decides that Togo doesn't hear anything like that anyway, but he thinks that if there is at least one person in the world who will love him even without the crown. At that moment, the heroine realizes in shock that it is Kyle. She screams, and the blonde man becomes embarrassed and says that she looks just as surprised every time they meet. The girl is embarrassed and thinks that it really is Kyle, but she doesn't understand why he is here so late. The blonde man says he heard about her illness. The heroine thinks it's because of him that she's sick. Her heart hurts, and even in the dark she sees only him, deciding that these are hallucinations, but the guy says that he is in front of her and let her speak out loud. A little while later, they sit down, and Kyle asks if she's had her hair cut. She's surprised he noticed, considering it was Benji's job. She explains that Mrs. Tilly would not have given her the job if she had known that she couldn't read. So she decided to dress up as a guy, but she didn't expect to have her hair cut so short. Kyle is surprised and asks if she really can't read. The girl is shocked and doesn't understand. Didn't Benji tell her? The blonde asks who read her letters then, and the heroine looks away. Kyle says it must have been the servants who did it, which is why they treated him like that, serving him hard cakes and dried ink. The girl doesn't believe it, because they seemed kind. At this moment, she feels pain in her leg again and winces. The blonde notices this and asks if she is in pain, and she admits that she sprained her ankle. The girl apologizes for the letters and says that since she is ill, let him forgive her at least once. Kyle leans over her leg and offers to examine it, which greatly surprises the heroine. She says she doesn't understand what he's doing, and sheepishly adds that her feet might smell bad. The blonde replies that it doesn't matter, and the girl becomes even more embarrassed. Watching him from above, she thinks he looks even cuter and wishes she could be taller so she could see him like this all the time. The guy says that people taller than him are rare. The heroine is shocked and wonders why this voice conveys even such trifles to Kyle. The blonde asks if Togo wants to help her hide her thoughts, since after changing her clothes she had more of them. The lady wonders if she really looks like a man, but immediately says that it doesn't matter because she's still cute. Kyle jokes that it looks like she hurt her head instead of her leg, and the girl just asks if she's really that good. After all, Kyle is, of course, beautiful, but she too, it seems to her, is not at all ugly. The guy turns away and says that with such an injury, they should call the palace doctor, but Kim Ji-ja replies that she is just a guy from the stables. The blonde reminds her that she's still his hostage until they figure out who she is, so she should be okay. The heroine, shocked, asks if he's really talking about this again, since she already said that it wasn't true. Kyle asks what happened to Kim Ji-ja, and she tells him how Dieppe suddenly took off running that afternoon. She tried to catch him, and he, recognizing her, rushed as if he wanted to plunge her into eternal sleep. The blonde man says it's now clear why she called for help, adding that horses don't attack those who feed them. But in any case, it's good that only the ankle was injured, and the lady agrees. She adds that she was saved by Benji, who grabbed her in time and threw her aside. The guy remembers what he saw during the day and says that it seems like she and Benji have become very close. The heroine looks at his face and is struck by this unhappy and attractive look, finding in it the perfect balance. The blonde says he's already developing an immunity to everything she says. The girl asks if she can continue then, but the guy asks her to forget about it, because he meant something else. Kyle gets up and asks to do this less often, because he feels awkward eating when such thoughts are playing in his head. The heroine admits that she didn't think that he was hearing her voice and not something from the outside. The guy asks if this means that everything was true, and he didn't dream anything. Kim Ji-ja asks him to give an example of what he heard, but the blonde man becomes embarrassed and says that it doesn't matter. The girl asks him to speak louder and asks what he said. The guy sheepishly admits that she often told him that she loved him and that he was handsome. The lady is also embarrassed, but puts her hand on her chest and says that it is true. These are sincere words. The blonde looks away and says that Dieppe is his horse, so he takes full responsibility. The girl asks if he's really gonna give it away. She asks him not to do this, because Dieppe, although stern, can sometimes be friendly, and all the horses still belong to Kyle. She understands that if he continues to reduce the number of horses, it will hurt more than just her feelings. But both his raiding in the palace and the system itself anger her. Kyle agrees and says he'll handle it, and that Dieppe is probably upset too. He's upset that she couldn't catch up with him, so he'll come and teach her how to ride. The heroine jumps up and can't believe her luck, asking if he'll come every day. He replies that the horses need attention. Kim Ji-ja asks not to say that it is not because of her, because he is clearly worried about her safety. Looking at him, she wonders why he is so embarrassed. Because it is incredibly cute. He seems like a real piece of candy to her in every way, and she thinks about it too openly, and Kyle says that he hears everything and asks her not to say such embarrassing things. At this moment, the heroine notices a falling star in the sky and tells His Highness that a starfall has begun. The guy doesn't understand what she's talking about and replies that her neck might get hurt if she lifts her head like that. But the girl insists that it is a meteor shower and asks him to make a wish quickly. The young man recalls his sister's words that no matter what the city becomes, it will still remain just the blue star of Biltion. In her mind, the heroine asks Rick to stop feeding her potatoes and for meat to become her regular diet. She wants Kyle to be happy and shamelessly enjoy the love he receives from others. The guy says the stars are useless. Kim Ji-ja turns around in surprise and asks what he means. He replies that the stars are just the pitiful remnants of daylight and will never become the sun. They can't exist near the sun. After these words, the heroine takes his hand and admits that it hurts her to hear this. She asks him to think about the fact that no matter how brightly the sun shines, wishes are made to the stars. For her, the stars are a symbol of hope. The guy looks at her silently. Then he suddenly becomes embarrassed and quickly turns away. The girl asks if he's cold and if his eyes hurt. She guesses that perhaps a strong wind has picked up. The blonde man asks something, but she doesn't hear it and asks him to repeat it. The guy asks her if she really likes him. This angers the heroine, and she wonders if he's serious. She's irritated that he's asking this question after everything she's been saying for a whole month. The girl grabs him and turns him towards her, asking him to look into her eyes. Kim Ji-ja understands that she has long wanted to make him happy, and even if the future cannot be changed, he must know that she loves him. At least he shouldn't feel lonely. That's what she was thinking, and now he's asking again. The guy repeats the question and wonders why she is silent, but she gets goosebumps just from looking at his face. He says she's quiet and asks if she's lost in her thoughts again. Then the heroine takes his face in her hands and says that she will say everything directly, without any detours, calling Kyle the best. She assures him that he truly is the best. Sometime later, the butler, Pell, His Highness's chief servant, he notices that the prince has been acting extremely strange lately. At some point, the blonde man addresses him and asks what kind of person he appears to be from the outside. Pell thinks of the prince who shamelessly rejects the heart of a little boy, about an unfortunate young man suffering because of the emperor, empress, brothers, sisters, and mercenaries. He finds the prince cold-blooded and realizes that he would like to say too much. But since he receives a salary, he cannot afford to tell the truth. So he simply says that His Highness is, of course, perfect. The boy is surprised and asks if Pell really thinks so. The man doesn't understand what this means, and the blonde continues that he doesn't consider himself simply handsome. The butler is at a loss, and the guy suddenly asks, should he wash his face with rose water or style his hair before going to bed? Pell realizes that the gentleman is acting especially strange today, and it started after the meteor shower. Then he saw the prince lying on the floor and asked in fear if everything was okay, and he answered that yes. He inquired where the prince had been the night before without Benji, and heard that he had gone into the stables for a short while. Pell asked how he could be okay if his face was all red, and now he understands that since then His Highness's condition has not changed. The butler asks what is happening to him and whether something happened in the stable. The guy remembers the lady's words about the stars as a symbol of hope and becomes embarrassed. He asks Pell what he usually thinks about when he looks at the stars. But the butler is surprised, because it is daytime, and the prince comes to his senses, apologizing for the nonsense. He says that he would like to go to the stables, but today he is tired and can rest. Pell wonders if he's going there again, and if it's for Joe. However, His Highness is already leaving, and the butler is wondering if the boy said something offensive to the prince. And isn't that why he suddenly started taking care of his appearance? Sometime later, the heroine is back working at the stables. She feels her ankle is fully healed and is returning to heavy work, although it is getting colder every day. Since the night Kyle left in a hurry, everyone noticed that he began to show up at the stables almost on schedule. When the girl turns around and sees him on horseback, for the first time in a long time, she wants to work with joy. Benji keeps running in and asking if her ankle is okay and if she's hurt. He says she should rest more and asks why she tries so hard. The heroine replies that now nothing bothers her and demonstrates how freely she moves her leg. Benji reminds her that she spoke of her sympathy for His Highness, and she, without hesitation, replies that she likes him very much. He says that noble girls usually do not boast of their strength to those they care about. The girl replies that without connections and luxury, she would simply remain hungry, and her main charm is her endurance. Benji realizes this, and at that very moment, His Highness passes by them. He tells Joe that he has to leave, so he won't be able to come to the stables for a while. Kim Gaeum-ja realizes that the prince is always busy and asks where he is going. The guy replies, a little sadly, that he's going to Hestein. The girl is surprised by this. She tries to remember this place from the novel, but she remembers it only vaguely, as if it was mentioned in passing. Then she asks what this place is famous for, and the guy replies that it is famous for silk. He asks if he should bring her anything, but she refuses, remembering that something important was connected with the silk. The novel mentioned a rare ore that couldn't be removed from its mining site. The black-eyed prince, Asaka. He managed to bring her to Biltion, succeeded in trade, and thus declared himself taking the throne. Orbsidal, the black shining ore, was the same color as his eyes, and the name of the land sounded similar. The girl involuntarily utters a word that sounds like an address to her older brother in Korean. The blonde gets embarrassed and says that if she wanted to call him that, it won't work. The heroine is amazed and asks why she calls the prince brother, since handsome men are usually called differently, but he says that this is not the point. He asks her to take care of the horses and turns to Benji, saying that he is going with him. The heroine is surprised, and Benji replies that accompanying the knights is natural. He realizes that the two are too close to be left alone. At that moment, he notices the lady's gaze. She tells the prince that he is actually riding with someone he doesn't love, and he just feels awkward asking her to go with him. Kim Gaeum-ja thinks her intuition works flawlessly, and she was even called Kim Intuition before. She asks if she's right, but the guy turns away and says it's time to get down to business, calling for Benji. The heroine understands that he was embarrassed because she hit the nail on the head, and she finds it terribly sweet. She wishes them a safe journey. Several days have passed since Kyle and Benji's departure. The girl sighs and says it's become too empty without them, even though she had a lot to do. Work filled the days, but the emptiness inside did not disappear, and she wondered if the stable had always been so spacious. Suddenly, a stranger addresses her, and upon seeing him, she screams in surprise. The guy calmly asks if she works here. Kim Gyum-ja answers affirmatively and asks what happened. The young man explains that his brother comes here for some reason. Taking a closer look, she realizes that the guy is unusually handsome and has a bright future ahead of him. She asks about her brother, and then notices that since Kyle left, the servants have been coming in to chat more often. The girl says that she has already learned the names of almost everyone and offers to say whose it is, but the young man sharply asks her to stop asking questions, and this angers the heroine. He says he wants to ride a horse instead, and she can hardly contain herself. She wants to hit him, but she remembers her cheerful image and endures it. She thinks about something good, for example, about her beloved Kyle, and the boy asks questions. Can't she hear him? He wants to ride. After a little while, the heroine asks if he even knows how to ride a horse. He confidently replies that he can and asks if she knows who he is. Kim Gyum-ja says that this is wonderful because horses have not run for a long time, and she is pleased that he can ride, after which she asks his name. The young man introduces himself to Theo, and the girl happily invites him inside. She warns that it smells like manure there, but they quickly get used to it. The girl shows him the horses and calls each one by name, including Dieppe. She says she has little understanding of prices, but Dieppe is the most expensive and has the worst character. Theo asks about herself, and she asks if he is interested in her character, but he only asks her name. She suggests calling her just Joe. The girl wonders if it is possible to behave with children as freely as with Rick. The young man turns away and says that, of course, he will call her Joe. Kim Gyum-ja wonders if it really worked and smiles, because no matter what he is still a child. The girl realizes it looks very cute and gently strokes the boy's head. The guys comment that it looks like Joe has only been working there for a short time, and the main character replies that it's been less than 2 months. The lady also asks why he even asked that question. The young man replies that he was surprised because no one here is allowed to touch his hair. At that moment, several maids begin to call for His Highness and hastily search for him. One says that he was not there where she looked, and the other adds that he did not appear in the direction where she was sent either. The woman nervously remarks that if he catches the eye of Miss Priscilla, the consequences will be dire. But suddenly, one of the maids notices His Highness, the very same guy everyone knows as the quasi-prince. He's Kyle's younger brother, born to Priscilla. He's the 5th in line, and therefore very far from the throne. But more importantly, he doesn't have red eyes. Because of this, his position in the palace is almost insignificant. He was even given the humiliating nickname of Underprince, and the only person who paid any attention to him was Kyle. Whenever the boy looked into his brother's office, the blonde always said that everything was fine and allowed him to enter. Then Theodore would come in and ask if his brother was really studying again. He'd reply that only after graduating from the academy could he begin studying the succession to the throne. Although Theo was still young, he was already well aware of the situation he and his brother were in. No matter how hard they tried, almost no one noticed. And even though those above Kyle in the hierarchy made fun of him from time to time, the boy never dropped out of school. Theo sincerely admired his older brother, and one day ran to him with a chessboard. He ran into the room and happily said that they hadn't played chess for a long time, offering to arrange a game. But the blonde man apologized and said that he needed to leave urgently and suggested playing later. From that moment on, it seemed like there was no room left for Theo next to his brother. The next day, the situation repeated itself. His brother was busy again. No matter how often the boy came, his brother always found something to do. Theo began to feel betrayed. Even when they were together, it seemed like his brother's thoughts were somewhere far away. And before leaving for Hestine, he didn't even come to say goodbye in person. One day, while walking down the corridor, the young man heard several maids quietly gossiping. One of them was talking about His Highness Kyle and asking if he seemed strange. The other replied that he was, and that he was getting stranger every day. One maid added that he was always busy with something in the stables. She said that as soon as all the business in the palace was finished, he immediately appeared there, just like Mr. Bungie. The young man thought about the stables and couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did his brother really like horses? Every time Kyle went there, he looked unusually excited. But he, like a fool, did not notice anything and enthusiastically thought that his brother was simply waiting for his return. He was confident that by then he would become a true master of horsemanship. And one day, Theo himself went to the stables. Now the young man exclaims that it is already late and asks if Joe knows what time it is. The main character calmly replies that it is 8 in the morning and asks if he really came to see her today. The young man sharply replies, asking why he even wants to see her, and says he's come to see the horses. The girl realizes he's already at home here. The young man says that enough talk and orders Rinji to be brought because he is going to mount her. At that moment, Kim Gyamja taps him on the forehead and says that they should work on his tone first. She is indignant that such a boy dares to talk like that to someone who is much older. The lady admits that she feels uncomfortable because it reminds her of how her former boss spoke to her. The young man immediately asks if she is talking about the boss and wonders who he is. He also asks if anyone else has come here and if she has a close relationship with anyone. The main character realizes that if you think about it, after Theo started coming here, the others really stopped showing up. Even while eating, they barely had time to greet her. One day, the boy panicked and said that if the nanny found out about his visits, everyone would be fired. The girl realizes that this has become their usual morning routine lately, and most likely everyone is just busy. But Theo brings her out of her thoughts, asking again who this boss is. The main character thinks for a moment and says that this is her boss, with whom she used to work. The boy states that, judging by everything, he was a bad person, since he was always told not to speak to his subjects like that. Kim Jae-amja agrees and says that one should treat him with care, then asks who taught the boy that. He asks again in surprise if she really considers him a simple person. The girl replies that they both don't have a last name. She's just Joe, and he's just Theo. The guy is about to object, but stops himself and tells Joe to think about it later. Right now, all that matters to him is riding Rinji. He loudly demands again to bring Rinji, and the main character is already covering her ears. She sighs and agrees, saying that she is ready to take him for a ride just for him, but if the prince finds out, it will be the end for her. The guy tells her not to be afraid and to hurry. The girl thinks he's still so young, but he already knows how to manipulate her, and she's terrified to imagine what will happen next. The girl leads out one of the horses and notices that Theo has come to see her again. At this moment, it seems to her as if they have forgotten something important. Meanwhile, the young man with black hair turns to Dolores and tells her to look. There really is a palace visible ahead. The girl asks him not to fuss and says that when they enter, those who hate him will be very surprised. She adds that this is just the beginning, and Isaka must control himself. While the main character is giving the boy a ride, she hears someone calling His Highness and asking where he is. The girl turns to Theo and says it seems a prince has disappeared. The boy calmly replies that this is probably true. The lady admits that she misses His Highness Kyle very much. Theo asks if she truly misses him. Joe says she's not the type to meet him whenever she wants, adding that he just doesn't know. She says she and His Highness are spiritually connected. The young man, surprised, asks if she's talking about herself and Kyle. The girl confidently answers yes. The guy asks if they both really think so. The lady says that it is so, because His Highness's face always turns red when he stands right in front of her. But to herself, she understands that he is blushing rather because of her intrusive thoughts. The young man is silent for a moment, and then says that all this time, Kyle has been denying any rumors about the wedding. So these are his preferences. Kim Jae-amja asks what he means. And then she realizes that she now looks like a man. And even if she says that it was a joke, it won't help. The girl mentally turns to Kyle and thinks that rumors will always surround him because of his high position. At this point, the blonde man says he feels like Joe is acting irresponsibly again. Theo adds that he thought His Highness had taken a liking to horses, and that's why he started visiting the stables so often. If he came to meet Joe, that's odd. And while Theo also enjoys spending time with him, on the other hand, he doesn't understand a lot of things. The girl says it's an adult matter. The boy replies that no matter how much he looks, Joe looks like some kind of dude, and he doesn't understand why His Highness needs such a person. The main character warns that if he calls her uncle again, she will slap the horse on the rump and it will throw him off. After this, the young man jumps off his horse and says that he needs time to think, so that's all for today. He runs away, and the main character still doesn't understand what happened. The young man wonders if his brother is dating Joe Vinny, and if there really is a connection between them. 2 days later, the young man declares that he will support them. The protagonist asks, in what way? He replies that he believes that Joe will be able to protect His Highness because he is strong. And it works well, even though His Highness is also strong. Besides, he thinks they look harmonious together. At this moment, the main character hugs the guy, and he, in shock, asks what it is. The girl picks him up and says he's so cute. Theo asks him to stop, reminding her of his costume, but she sends him home and tells him to ask his mom to change him. After all, judging by the way he rides, he clearly does not come from a poor family. The guy asks her if she knows how ugly his mother is. The girl replies that it's okay to be afraid of your mother, but there's nothing you can do about it, because you can't choose your parents. There wasn't a single person who didn't know Yi Yeon-suk from the Gwangbakdong district. Mari then asked if that was really his mother's name. The young man adds that his mother is very busy and doesn't even have time to change his clothes. Although things were different before, the main character says that perhaps he simply misunderstood, because for parents nothing is more important than their children. The guy replies that his mother hasn't spoken to him at all for a long time. Orban and the ore that can be brought back from there are far more important to her. He says that if you make a ball out of it, it will be incredibly strong. The girl strokes the boy's head again and understands how many worries he carries within himself. She thinks about Orban and feels that she has heard about this place many times before. Suddenly she realizes that Orbsidel is a glittering black ore. Weapons forged from metal mined in Orban are considered the strongest. That's why rumors circulated that whoever seizes Orbsidel will receive this palace. No one could have imagined that it would end up in the hands of the black-eyed man, whose existence no one had previously known about. But it was he who was the first to seize the ore and secured the support of the most powerful Orban. After this, the main character grabs Theo and asks if the black-eyed prince has already arrived at the palace. The guy replies that it seems the rumors have reached here too, and in any case, he will soon fall into eternal sleep. Kim Jeom-ja asks what he is talking about and why he thinks this man will fall into eternal sleep. The young man replies that everyone whose eyes are a different color falls into eternal sleep. He adds that he himself doesn't know when this will happen to him. Kim Jeom-ja asks why he says such things, and what does eye color even matter, but the guy replies that she is dating His Highness Kyle. So it seems that eye color really doesn't matter to Joe. Looking at the guy, the girl is surprised. She realizes his expression reminds her of someone. At this point, the young man says that rumor has it that the black-eyed prince is the child of Her Majesty Empress Luijian. He arrived wearing a scarlet badge depicting a hawk, though His Majesty showed no particular interest in it. He still asked if the boy was his son, and the young man enthusiastically replied that he was. The man also said the young man bore a striking resemblance to Luijian. He added that it would be a great honor for His Majesty to meet him. The emperor noted that the way the boy proudly held the sword in front of him also strongly reminded him of her. The young man immediately said that this sword had come to him from her. It had been given to him by Emperor Luijian himself. Many believed that black was not a suitable color as a gift for the empress. But her hometown on the peninsula was famous for its iron ore, and she herself was an excellent swordsman. So the gift was chosen perfectly. The man smiled and said that the boy really was her son. After some time, one maid asked another if she had heard that this black-eyed youth was a relative of the empress. Moreover, even the emperor admitted it. The fair-haired lady was looking out the window at that moment. She said that Izuka had made a good start to the Alvinus estate. Born the eldest daughter of Daloa, she spent 16 years preparing to become the mistress of these lands. But in a family where love and harmony reigned, a son was later born. It was he who took the place of heir. Her father, mother, and even the land that had seemed her destiny had gone to him. Tired of all this, Daloa decided to go abroad to study, and one fateful day, everything changed. She met an old woman on the street who had fallen, and that is how she met her son. While the girl was sitting next to the woman, a young man ran into the room and called anxiously for his mother. At that moment, he noticed the girl. His mother turned to Izuka and addressed him as Highness. The old woman asked the boy to listen carefully to everything she was going to say. Before she fell into eternal sleep, she revealed all the secrets right in front of Daloa. She revealed that Izuka was actually a prince born to Emperor Biltion and Empress Luijian. The old woman took care of him at the request of the empress and admitted that she was just a simple maid. She said that His Highness should go to the palace, where he would certainly be recognized. After these words, she took her last breath. The young man, stunned, asked what it all meant. He asked if he was really a prince, because everything that was happening seemed like nonsense to him. But a girl on the side said that there was a high probability that the prince would fall into eternal sleep before he even reached the palace. The maid has already fallen into eternal sleep, and proving its origin will be difficult. He could be sentenced to eternal sleep for imposture, and living in a tiny province while hiding the truth will also be difficult. After all, she knew everything, the young man exclaimed. Was she really threatening him? The lady replied that he would either fall into an eternal sleep of poverty or become emperor. This would be the most important choice of his life. She demanded that Isuka promise to make her empress, and then she would help him ascend the throne. In the end, Isuka accepted her proposal, without realizing until then that he was a prince. She taught him everything like a true master, and then they went to the capital together. When the maid saw him off, she called him Highness, and the young man realized that he might never get used to it. As a child, when they were barely making ends meet, he considered the inhabitants of the shining palaces to be almost gods. It seemed to him that this was a completely different life, completely unrelated to him. With these thoughts, he entered the room. There he was met by Deloa. She said the entire palace was buzzing with the story of the new prince. The young man asked if it was all because he was recognized as her son. The girl replied that if his only goal was recognition, it might have been easier to hide in a quiet village. But since he's come this far, he must live and become emperor, and the road ahead will be far more difficult than anything he's experienced. At that moment, someone ran into the room, and the guy even sat up in surprise. The out-of-breath woman looked at him, and he asked who she was. She said that her name was Luigi Anne, that she was the third empress and his real mother. With tears in her eyes, she asked if it was really Isuka, then hugged him, repeating that he had survived. She thanked fate that her son grew up healthy, and did not let him go from her arms for a long time. But for some reason, the boy didn't feel that strong love from her. After a while, Deloa handed the woman a handkerchief, and she thanked her. She asked if the girl was of the Alvanus clan, and remarked that if Isuka were alone, it would be difficult for him to get here. The blonde replied that it was an honor for her to bring His Highness to the palace. She added that no matter how far apart they are, family always remains family. The woman asked if she was talking about family, and Deloa explained that her great-grandmother's name was Herberta Salterison. At that time, there were active wars between the peninsula and the empire. She was proud of the fact that, despite her family's modest status, they are related by blood to Princess Kay Terrison. The memory of her great-grandmother always lived in her heart. Isuka was shocked, as he had never heard of this before. His mother said everything was clear now. The blonde added with a smile that, although they had a lot of land, it couldn't be cultivated because of the scarlet soil. She heard that the name Allah appeared after the new emperor decided to visit these lands. However, this visit turned out to be an empty formality because the territory was too far away. Then the war with Electamon began, and events at the palace began to be cancelled. Since then, their lands have been little more than a small area for the indigenous population. The region was small, but ferrous metallurgy was very well developed there. The woman added that Ilan was from neighboring lands. The blonde lady smiled and said that they still had to survive somehow. Alvanese doesn't give up, though it may sound harsh, but that's what they say in her family. She thanked Isuka for surviving and being there again. The woman took the guy by the hand and said that everything she said now would sound like an excuse, but it was the best decision she could make for his survival. In fact, Isuka wanted to say a lot. Why she abandoned him, why she gave him proof of his return, and why now she doesn't tell him to run away again. But he could not utter a word, and all the questions remained like a heavy burden in his heart. Later, as the boy walked down the corridor, someone said that His Highness had tried hard and should only say what was necessary. Isuka realized it was Deloa. He told her that nothing else mattered and asked one question. He asked if she could call him by his first name, as she had before. The lady placed her hand on his cheek, and he was surprised. The girl said that if he wanted to remain stupid, he should return to the back streets of Alvanese. She added that he needed to have a good rest today because everything was going according to plan. The only question is how well Isuka can play her role. He may not have red eyes, but if they bring Orban, they won't be able to help but recognize him. Soon Prince Isuka will appear before the people as the black-eyed prince who has taken possession of the Orban deposit. Kyle must have felt slighted seeing his younger, black-eyed brother gaining the Empire's recognition. At this point, the main character abruptly says that crying is forbidden and that it's not allowed. She realizes she'd completely forgotten about it. After all, she promised to make Kyle happy, Surprisingly, she completely missed the novel's plot, having become so engrossed in horses. She thinks she's been too careless and worries what to do if Kyle gets hurt again. How can she look at the tears that will roll from his big, beautiful eyes? Theo asks Joe what she's thinking about so seriously. She asks if his brother works around here. He replies yes. Joe says that since he was able to bring his family to the palace, it means he's doing important work, and asks how long he's been working here. Theo says it's been 20 years. She's surprised and asks if he knows when His Highness Kyle will return. The guy replies that he heard, and it will happen very soon. Joe wonders if he can pass something on to Benji. She takes the young man by the hand and says that she has a request for him. Joe asks to tell Minister Benji from the administration that he should definitely stop by to see her upon returning to the palace. Theo asks again if she's talking about Benji, and strange thoughts start to appear in his head. The girl adds that she really needs Benji. Theo wonders if Joe is talking about Benji, since he heard that she is dating his brother. He begins to think she's playing two games and immediately turns to Joe. He indignantly asks how she can do this. If she's with His Highness, why does she need Benji? The main character realizes that it really does look like she is playing a double game. She frantically thinks about how to get out of this, and soon finds a suitable excuse. Joe says she simply misspoke and doesn't want to see anyone but His Highness. It's Josephine who's looking for Benji, not her. Theo asks who Josephine is. The girl replies that she is her twin sister. She says she works somewhere else. Theo doubts it, as this is the first he's heard of it, but Joe assures her that's true. She adds that if she tells Benji that name, he'll understand, because they're so close. Joe recalls how much time she spent with him before she cut her hair. Theo asks why Josephine is looking for Benji. Kim Ji-ja thinks about it. She thinks about what to come up with this time, realizing that unconvincing answers will only increase suspicions. Kim Ji-ja regrets that she didn't develop her imagination as a child. She ends up saying that Josephine and Mr. Benji are actually dating. The knight notices a chill run down his spine. Theo asks if it's Joe speaking, that her sister Josephine is dating Mr. Benji, and Joe herself is dating His Highness Kyle. The main character replies that this is exactly how it is, even though it sounds strange. Kim Ji-ja feels like things are getting closer to a climax and wonders if Taeo noticed something out of place. The young man asks how they, being ordinary palace workers, managed to become close to the nobleman Benji, and even to His Highness. He also understands that if Her Majesty finds out about this, Joe will be in great danger. The main character, looking at the guy, thinks if he really believed her, and then turns to him, but the boy only asks if anyone else knows about it. Kim Ji-ja, looking at the young man, thinks how cute he is. After this, she strokes his head and says that only the chick knows about this. Theo wonders if Joe really called him a chick, and the heroine explains that she once had a bird with that name. The young man asks if she really shares secrets with animals, and the girl confidently answers that she does. After all, people can't be trusted with such important secrets. At that moment, the guy kicks her in the leg, and she screams. The girl realizes that he seems to have a strange hobby of kicking people, and the guy says that she told him everything, or her mouth speaks for itself. Kim Ji-ja replies that it is because she trusts Taeo and asks her not to tell anyone about it. The young man is embarrassed and agrees, and the heroine sighs, realizing that she seems to have figured everything out. Several months later, Kyle returns to the palace and immediately senses that much has changed in his absence. Among the Empress's children were those who were not born with red eyes, and some of them were rumored to have been hidden. But only a brave man could appear so openly in the palace, and it was clear what the mother's reaction would be. At that moment, someone suddenly bursts into the office. Kyle says he was startled. He asks what happened, but the boy hitting the table shouts whether his brother really has such a connection with Joe. The blonde asks if he's talking about Joe and wonders how Theodore even knew about him. Theo explains that he is talking about the guy from the stables, white-haired, kind, and knowing that he is quite handsome. Kyle thinks about his connection with Joe and is at a loss for words. The brother continues by saying that the guy is just a little taller than him, is rude to him, and is ignorant but funny. His Highness replies that this is wonderful and wishes them a good time, but the brother says that is not what he meant. He asks again if Kyle is really in that kind of relationship with Joe. Theo shakes his brother and asks if this is true and if Joe lied to him. When the blonde remains silent, the brother asks directly if this is true. His Highness sheepishly replies that he misunderstood everything a little, and Theo says that Her Majesty will definitely be furious because he is a prince. Besides, Joe is a commoner, and a man too. Vanina turns to her brother and asks if that's true. At this moment, Kyle remembers an important fact that had completely slipped his mind. He realizes that Joe is actually a girl pretending to be a guy and is shocked, although looking at her pulling a huge cart, it is hard to believe. Theo tells his brother to come to his senses, reminding him that he is the first prince. Not only is Her Majesty already worried about the black-eyed prince, but if her brother is like that too, what should they do then? It would be the end of my brother if Her Majesty caught him. And no one knew how far she might send Joe. Moreover, Joe, without thinking, tells everyone how much he misses him. Kyle realizes she's admitting she's bored and wonders why she even said that to a child. According to Theodore, if these ridiculous rumors reach his mother's ears, Joe might not be exiled, but rather sent into an eternal sleep. So Kyle says it was a misunderstanding, there's no relationship, and asks him not to tell anyone. The young man asks if this is true, believing Joe was talking nonsense. Moreover, he said that his older sister was dating Benji, so he just decided to embellish himself. At this moment, the person in question enters the room and wishes His Highness a good evening. He asks who they were talking about, and Theodore replies that they were talking about Josephine, and asks if she is Joe's older sister. The young man adds that the Duke will be upset to learn that the knight has fallen in love with a commoner. Kyle is surprised and asks if Josephine and Benji are really together, and Theo is surprised that his brother didn't know about it. He also asks if Joe didn't tell him about his sister's affair with Benji, and Kyle is instantly stunned. He cries out, "Did Joe really say that?" And the young man is surprised that his brother didn't know. Theo asks if Joe said that Josephine was with Benji, and that he was supposedly with his brother. Benji screams in shock, wondering if Joe is meeting His Highness, and Theo looks around and asks why they are so noisy. Both remain completely perplexed. After a while, Theo says that his brother should still say something sobering to Joe. After all, it seems that he is seriously mistaken and suddenly climbs into a hug, considering it cute. Kyle asks what he means, and Theo replies that maybe Joe just doesn't know he's a prince. He adds that Joe is a good guy, and he can tolerate this for a little while, especially since it doesn't spoil his mood. The blonde understands that everything is clear. And while he was gone, the girl managed to get closer to Theodore in a very short time. If that's the case, he could lose her. Theo says it's the first time he's been hugged like that. He admits that he doesn't like being treated like a child and doesn't know what to feel. Theo asks his brother if he wouldn't be upset too if Joe started treating him like a child. Noticing his brother's silence, he asks what happened. The blonde just smiles and asks Theodore a question. He says that they are not the same because he is dating Joe, but his brother is not, and Theo is confused by these words. Kyle claims that this is true because they have a loving relationship, while his brother and Joe are just friends, and that's why they can't be on the same level. Theo reminds him that his brother just denied everything. Kyle replies that he was afraid for Joe's safety. After all, Theo knows their mother's character well. At this point, Benji interrupts the conversation. He asks whether silks and wine from Highstein should be sent to Her Majesty. Kyle replies that he will hand it over himself, and Theo suddenly remembers something and turns to Benji. He says that Josephine asked him to give something, and the guy wonders if it was for him. Theo replies that she asked Benji to be sure to come at night. Kyle watches this, and Theo tells his brother to hurry if he is going to see Her Majesty. But the blonde replies no, because it's specifically about the night. Theo reminds Benji that he needs to get things done after returning from Highstein. And anyway, why would my brother date Josephine if he was dating Joe? The blonde asks again if it's true that he was invited at night. After that, he turns around and says Theo is right. At that moment, Theo asks if he and Joe hugged. After all, every time he comes, Joe, with a very happy face, climbs up to him to hug him. Hearing this, both are terribly jealous, and Theo adds that the lady calls him small and cute and almost kisses him, and she constantly strokes his head. The blonde says that Joe confesses to him every day, but before he can finish speaking, Benji suggests that His Highness leave quietly. However, the blonde cries out that Joe said he wanted to always carry it in his pocket. Benji understands that he just wants to leave quickly, but Theo decides to irritate his brother and asks if Joe told him this too. The blonde asks if he really said that himself, and Theo confidently replies that he did. He remembers the lady saying that the boy was so small that he could fit in a pocket. Theo asks his brother if Joe ever told him anything like that. Kyle replies that he heard that from him too, and Theo says that it seems like Joe doesn't have any special feelings for his brother. After all, he told him the same thing, or he likes him as much as his brother. The blonde screams that everything is wrong, and Benji turns to His Highness with concern. Kyle wonders why he's so angry. Was it because Joe, who was in love with him, said similar words to Theodore? Or because this insidious gray-haired pervert is also encroaching on his younger brother? After this, the blonde apologizes to his brother for being too loud. He says that when Theo gets to know Joe better, he will understand how dangerous he is and asks him to be careful. Theo replies that if they have never hugged, then how did he even understand that it was dangerous? Kyle says he knows everything and asks Theodore to listen carefully because Joe is very cunning. Theo cries out that it doesn't matter, and yet he communicates with him closer than his brother. He may act like his grandfather sometimes, but they're still close. Kyle wonders where this guy gets his stubbornness from. Benji turns away and laughs, but at the same moment both look at him. After a short while, Theo says that the relationship rumors turned out to be nonsense. He is sure that the two will soon part, but he will still not tell anyone about his brother and Joe, and will keep Benji's relationship with the commoner a secret. At that moment, the blonde hears the thoughts of the lady, who admits how much she misses Kyle, and is surprised that even his name seems sweet to her. She realizes that she wants to see his beautiful face all the time, and thinks that it would be better if Kyle were injured instead of her. Then he would have to take off his shoes, and she would be able to at least look at his feet, because without his face, she would not want to do anything at all. After this, the blonde turns to his brother and says that Joe loves him exactly like that. Seeing his face is the joy of her life. She even likes his legs, and he cannot imagine such confessions. Benji covers his mouth and tells him that's enough, but Kyle continues to hear the heroine's voice, asking if he can hear her. She turns to Kyle, who's tired from the journey, telling him she misses him and finding his perpetual slight nervousness particularly appealing. Benji notices that His Highness looks very tired. The heroine continues, saying that if Kyle has anything to say, he should come to the stables quickly and ask if he is in pain after a long ride, because if he is in pain, it is a problem, because he is priceless to her. The girl apologizes and says that it would have been better if it hadn't slipped out of her mouth, but still asks Kyle to come to the stables, assuring that she won't do anything strange. At this point, the boy bites Benji on the hand and shouts to his brother that Joe is constantly thinking about him. The boy asks how his brother could know this and what exactly she thinks. The boy replies that he can't tell, and when asked why, he says that minors shouldn't hear such things. He adds that Joe always has a lot of strange thoughts, but she only thinks about him. Theo declares that these are all his brother's fantasies, but the blonde says that Joe wants to be reborn and become his lips. That's the kind of person she is. He's about to say something about her butt, but Benji immediately shuts him up and says that he definitely needs to stop now. Theo turns away, declares he's had enough, and leaves. Benji is relieved to think it's finally over. Already at the door, the young man tells his brother to be on guard, because when he grows up, he will become more handsome than him. As the boy leaves, His Highness says Benji can let go of his mouth. Benji apologizes and removes his hand, and the blonde man asks about the rumors about his relationship with Josephine. Benji replies that he most likely made it up on the spot, afraid of being caught. He also asks where the rumors about Kyle dating Joe came from, and the blonde says that it's probably someone's imagination too. Benji adds that he'll go with him tomorrow, and Kyle agrees, realizing that, come to think of it, that he was overly excited and acting childish. Meanwhile, the main character is sitting in the hay and thinking about her leg. The lady realizes that she had to rethink herself and her place in this new world. When she read the novel, she saw the events as grandiose, but now she understands that they were important only because the author wanted them to be so. Everything that happened in the castle turned out to be just a story about a distant country. She remembers that she asked them to come and wonders why no one has come yet. At this moment, a voice is heard, wondering where her feet have taken her and where she is at all. The main character looks at the lady and notices her eyes sparkling like emeralds and golden hair. She immediately understands that in front of her is Deloa Alvenis, the main character of the novel, the masterpiece of her life, who is now speaking to her. Deloa Alvenis is the one who, with her coolness and wit, pulled Isaku out of the darkness and made him emperor. It was she who became the protagonist, turning the fantasy world upside down and driving readers into despair. And now this girl stands before her and smiles. The blonde lady greets her. She says she has trouble seeing at night, which is why she seems to have gotten lost and gone the wrong way. Kim Gyumja asks why the madam is walking alone, without the maids, and Deloa wonders if the guy really knows her. The main character asks if she is Miss Deloa Alvenis, since they have heard so much about her. The girl asks if the guy from Alvenis has arrived, and the heroine immediately brushes him off. wondering who could have betrayed her like that. At this moment, the lady takes her by the cheek and says that everything is fine and that there is no need to be afraid and tell everything. Kim Ji-ja says that she heard about the arrival of the new prince with the miss from Alvanus because it is being talked about everywhere and she is wondering what to do if she is seduced by her. Deloa replies that rumors do indeed travel quickly in the palace when it comes to a new prince. Kim Ji-ja says that nothing can be done because she is a madam, and her interlocutor replies with a smile that this madam is also quite interesting. The main character screams as the lady realized that she is a girl. Deloa says it's obvious and that only fools can fail to realize it because of their short hair. Kim Ji-ja replies that no one actually knows, and the woman says that they are all fools. By any measure, the girl is very sweet. Deloa asks if she cut her hair for work, and the heroine realizes that, as they say, this lady is kind to those of lower status. Kim Ji-ja thinks she likes this girl too much, and this is what a man who remains an aristocrat even upside down looks like. Such a person will not become empress. Deloa asks the lady's name, and she replies that her name is Jo. The blonde asks if this is true, and the heroine agrees, suggesting that they call her simply Jo. Deloa says that this name sounds very sweet, and the main character almost goes blind from this nobility. She catches herself thinking that she wants this lady to stroke her head for the rest of her life, but she immediately stops herself, realizing that this is the main threat to Kyle. Kim Ji-ja wonders if this girl is really threatening him that much. What difference would it make if Isuka became emperor? And wouldn't Deloa have helped him and Kyle escape if they had supported his rule? The blonde asks if Jo will take her to a separate palace, since His Highness Izuka has not yet been allowed to move into the main one. The heroine agrees, and after a little while she is already leading the lady. Kim Ji-ja realizes that in a few weeks, they will probably have to go to Orban with Isaka, and the palace will no longer be needed, so she needs to tell Kyle to go there first. She thinks that Kyle and Benji won't be coming today anyway, and nothing bad will happen if she quickly sees this lady out. The blonde tells Jo that the way she holds the light means she can barely see anything. The main character automatically asks if the lady would like to carry the lamp herself, and immediately understands what she said. She immediately bows with apologies, realizing that it would be rude to offer a noble lady to carry a lamp. But Deloa calmly says that she only meant that they should walk side by side. The heroine replies that it will be so, but both understand that this also sounds strange. Deloa pulls the girl towards him and says that everything is fine, inviting her to come closer. She asks him to tell her story and explain how it happened that she had to pretend to be a man and work in the stable. Kim Ji-ja replies that everything is quite confusing, and the blonde lady says that she is just bored. The heroine notices that for a moment Delo's face in the shadows looks lonely and not at all like in the novel. The blonde asks if Jo will tell her story, and the heroine realizes that she only knows about Deloa what was in the book. In the novel, she existed only as the image of the person who led Prince Isuka to the throne. It didn't describe at all what she felt when she left her family and went to the capital. Readers only noted her cold character and determination, which made her even more attractive. But the heroine always wondered if this girl was lonely, and eventually begins her story. She doesn't tell everything, and changes details a little, like what happened to Pell. When she finishes, she explains that, having lost her memory, she saved His Highness Kyle, and in gratitude, he took her into his service. Deloa asks why. Then, she works in the farthest part of the palace. The heroine explains that there was no work in the palace for a woman who could not read, so she pretended to be a man and went to the stables. After all, even an illiterate man will still find work. Deloa agrees, and Kim Ji-ja finds herself thinking that her story sounds too plausible. She thinks that with such acting skills, she could have dropped out of high school. The blonde lady takes Jo by the hand and offers to teach her to read. The main character is shocked and wonders why Miss Deloa is doing this to her. After all, for her, only Kyle exists. Meanwhile, the lady is looking for a twig. Having found her, she begins to draw something on the ground and asks to look, because now she will write her name. The heroine says it looks like an earthworm, and Deloa smiles. The lady apologizes and says she's not laughing at Jo, she was just amused by his reaction. The main character looks at her with admiration, and says that the miss is very beautiful. She then adds that she doesn't know much about etiquette, and perhaps it's not right to speak to peasants like that. The blonde replies that it's not that. She was simply surprised by the expression on his face. The heroine admits that she has a weakness for beautiful faces, and her interlocutor asks if that is why she works for His Highness Kyle. The lady suggests that if working in the stables is hard, try becoming a servant in the palace of His Highness Asaki. The work may not be easy, but it was not any worse than the stables, and besides, they could see each other more often. Kim Ji-ja thinks this lady is like melted sugar caramel, sweet and warm. She still apologizes and says it's impossible. Deloa asks why. The heroine replies that everything suits her, and the blonde nods understandingly. After a short time they approach the palace. Deloa thanks them for the escort and says that it is time for her to return. The heroine wishes Madame to eat more tasty things and thanks her for the letter lesson, even though she didn't remember everything due to memory problems. Returning, she wonders if she made a mistake somewhere, because she couldn't even imagine that Deloa would offer her a job. Even though she was incredibly sweet, her main goal was always to make Kyle happy. In her thoughts, she wishes for him to laugh more often and enjoy life because she wants to become the closest person to him. This requires things to go wrong, and she wonders if Kyle should meet Count Orban before Izaka. Then she tries to remember what should happen next in the novel. At a social event, Isaku, who is laughed at behind his back, is mistakenly forced to drink a poisoned glass of wine. Everyone knew that Sienna had slipped the poison, and Deloa was furious that she had been unable to change anything. A few days later, Isaka approached Benji, and the heroine wonders if there was something else that happened between then, but she can't remember. She realizes that she must have forgotten because it was insignificant. The fifth prince was plunged into eternal sleep. The palace quickly hushed up the incident, but in the novel, Isaka was in shock. The heroine realizes that she doesn't even know the name of the fifth prince, and it seems that he has never appeared before. She decides that it is not that important. And when the two arrive at the stables, she should immediately tell them to go to Orban. She sees Deloa off and returns to the stables, but the night passes and no one comes. The next morning, the heroine is angry and wonders if this little Theo couldn't convey her request properly. It's probably because he's still a child, even though she asked him to convey important words to his brother. He says he's grown up, but in reality, he's still a child. At that moment, someone greets Joe. The heroine turns around sharply and cries out, "Is that really Madame?" The blonde lady smiles. She asks if Joe is feeling well this morning, and Kim Ji-ja becomes embarrassed. She thinks that in daylight it becomes clear what a true beauty this lady is. At this point, the blonde turns to Joe, and the protagonist asks what's wrong. The lady calmly replies that she's drooling. Kim Ji-ja immediately wipes it off and says it's because of the strong influence of the grass, because it seems winter is already approaching. Deloa adds that everything is clear with Joe. The main character declares that if Madame were even a little less beautiful, she would be more careful, but she is simply perfect. Deloa smiles and says that Joe is quite the joker. Kim Ji-ja wonders if the lady thinks she's joking, and if no one has ever told her how beautiful she is. It's as if people like her have no eyes at all. Joe says that the lady is truly the most beautiful she has ever seen, and even more beautiful than any role-playing game character. When the blonde asks who this character is, the girl realizes that her tongue has failed her again. After this, she claims that a long time ago, in the area where she lived, one clan was called that way. The people of this clan had no money, no status, nothing at all, but they were all strikingly beautiful. Therefore, they became the standard of beauty. And people in its lands, seeing something beautiful, said that the person was like a character. Then the main character suggests the lady not stand outside and come inside. The blonde replies that everything is fine. She only came to give Joe something. After this, the lady hands her a book, and the main character asks with interest what it is. Deloa explains that it's a book of fairy tales. She brought it to Joe because she said she couldn't read, and was afraid others would ignore her. Kim Ji-ja immediately thanks the lady and exclaims that she will treasure the book like the apple of her eye. The blonde replies that she is delighted and says she will drop by again. When the lady leaves, the girl realizes that Miss Dello is something incredible. She has a kind heart, a soft voice, and not a single flaw. The fair-haired lady at this time turns to her maid, who immediately responds. Deloa orders her to find out if this character actually existed. The girl wonders how Joe dared to lie to her, since last time she said she had lost her memory. She won't tolerate anyone putting even straws in her wheels, so it looks like she and Joe won't be friends. She hates liars. Sometime later, the main character is having lunch and realizes it's steamed potatoes again. The uncle grumbles and wonders when they'll finally get some meat, even if he has to resort to force. And even if Deloa comes again and brings her the book, she still won't understand what it's about. No matter how you look at it, for her these are just pictures, and she doesn't understand what's written at all. But Miss Deloa is completely different, as if she had been able to talk since birth. Since they are all characters in a novel, No matter how hard she tries, she can't address Kyle as you. But with Miss Deloa, it's different. At that moment, someone approaches the lady from behind. He asks if it's really a book. The main character screams that Rick scared her and that she shouldn't be so silent. The man replies that if he'd made any noise, Joe would have been even more scared. So who's the fool? The girl tells him to just admit he's wrong and stop taunting her about her age. After this, the man takes the book and asks if these are really fairy tales and if they really read things like that to a guy her age. Kim Jung-ja demands the book back and asks why he's taking other people's things. He replies that he shouldn't raise his voice, as the boy sometimes forgets himself and shows disrespect to his elders. The main character says Rick has no respect for anyone and asks what's wrong with Togo. The man grumbles that he covers the kid with a blanket at night so he doesn't freeze, and that's how he gets his thanks. Kim Gyamja replies that, of course, he's covering him, since he's nearly fallen into eternal sleep from frostbite so many times. Rick sarcastically asks if he really wants to sleep in a barn. At that moment, the book slips out of his hands and flies straight at His Highness, falling on his face. They hear a sound and turn around. Rick, realizing the situation, immediately declares that he has urgent business. He says it's something very important, and he needs to go. Kim Ji-am-ja wonders what kind of Murphy's Law this is. The blonde man notices with a smile that the lady seems to be in a great mood. The main character greets His Highness and says that she is very glad to meet him. Kyle replies that she was talking about urgent matters, and he didn't expect such a warm welcome. When the lady looks at her pet, she asks how this is possible, because he is beautiful even with scratches on his face. The guy tells her not to lie, because he heard everything, including what she just thought. Benji asks if Joe still can't stop thinking. The blonde asks him to stop and says it's not that bad. The guy has doubts, and the main character declares that even if everything is bad in this life, in the next she will lead a healthy lifestyle. Benji asks for moderation, reminding her that he swore allegiance to His Highness, and that they've gone too far. The girl replies that she understands, but thoughts aren't always controllable. She promises to be more careful and meditate every day. Then the blonde guy yells at her to just do nothing. The girl is confused as to what this means. Kyle explains that when she sits idle, her thoughts become too loud. Kim Ji-am-ja realizes that if she thinks about it, it's at times like these that she talks the most nonsense. She apologizes to His Highness and says that from now on, she will be constantly busy. The guy replies that that's not necessary either. The girl asks why. Kyle says that when she's busy, she gets too emotional, and it's better for her to just say thank you. Kim Gyamja asks why exactly, and the guy repeats all her indecent thoughts. Benji immediately points his sword at the lady. The girl is indignant and asks if they weren't on good terms just a few days ago. The blonde trips over something and, looking down, sees that very book. He stops Benji and asks Joe what the book is. She replies that Miss Deloa brought it. The blonde man is surprised, and the main character explains that this is the daughter of Count Alvenus, who arrived with Prince Izuka. She asks if they haven't met yet, because she thinks that this lady will definitely charm him. Her beauty is truly divine. Kyle asks why she gave him the book. The main character replies that they didn't exactly become friends, they were just both girls. At that moment, she realizes they'd asked her to keep her true gender a secret, and if they found out she'd been outed so quickly, they'd be really angry. It was all stupid. Kim Jae-am-ja suddenly says that perhaps the lady has simply fallen in love with her, and everyone around freezes. The main character looks at them and asks what kind of atmosphere this is. She thinks that there is nothing strange about this, because it seems completely natural to her. The blonde just sighs heavily, and the girl wonders if they really don't believe it that much. Kim Gyamja asks what's wrong with Kyle's expression. The blonde wonders if Benji and Theodore aren't enough for her. He adds that they have become very close since people know that she cannot read. The main character asks if all the prince's servants now know about this. It turns out Rick knows too, so it seems like everyone in the palace knows. The blonde guy feels like he's getting hit in the head with rocks. He furiously asks how it is that she attracts everyone she meets. And how is this even possible? Is it really sticky? Like glue, just like a Venus flytrap? The main character asks if this is true, and then expresses outrage at who even thought of calling her a flytrap. The young man shouts back that this is exactly what she does, clinging to people regardless of age. Kim Ja asks what's wrong with that, since she's quite attractive to a handsome guy, and in her home country, she would have been recognized long ago. Kyle says she doesn't even have an education, and what is she supposed to do in the world of the elite? She asks if he's talking about education. He flushes and reminds her that he told her to stay quiet in the palace. But she needed to communicate with everyone, and he asks what next, whether she is going to shake the emperor's hand. Kim Ji-ja replies that this was the next point of the plan, and she just wanted to meet His Majesty and declare that she is the king of all horses. Benji, watching them, thinks what children they both are. The blonde says her manner of speech is terrible. He doesn't understand how Lady Albaniz tolerates her at all. The protagonist asks how he can't understand. It's all about her beauty. They fall silent, and the girl asks why they're looking at her like that. Benji turns away awkwardly and admits that it might be true. The main character immediately asks His Highness if he understands. He looks at her gloomily and mentions the fly trap again. Kim Gi-ja is indignant that they're bringing that up again. She says that even Benji knows how to give compliments, but he doesn't, and shouldn't he at least once point out her beauty? The guy reluctantly answers that if you look closely, it's possible, and turns away. Embarrassed, he admits that he's never said anything like that to anyone. The main character is stunned. She asks if he's never flirted with girls at receptions. The guy asks if she's making fun of him. The girl thinks how sweet and innocent he is. The blonde asks her to stop thinking about stupid things, at least for now. He asks how a lady can like Albaniz only because of her looks, and if she thinks about something else. Kim Gi-ja replies that she is just a stable hand, but if that is true, then perhaps she just wants beautiful children. Kyle screams at her for daring to say such a thing and reminds her that hundreds of sentences are not enough for denigrating noble names. The main character screams that what's wrong with liking his face, even if she has to shovel manure to see it sometimes. She admits she hates the job, but she just enjoys looking at Kyle, and she doesn't get to do that very often. She wants to see his face every day and misses him so much that she is ready to plunge into eternal sleep. The guy is embarrassed, and the main character looks at him in shock. She grabs Benji and shouts that all the palace artists need to be gathered immediately. After all, His Highness's face is a combination of the world's aloofness and pure warmth, the perfect balance of cold and kindness. Such harmony could only be created by angels. It is too beautiful to admire alone, and this face should be on top of the palace. The blonde screams that it's enough. The girl feels like she's about to pass out from sheer delight. Kayla needs to be preserved and passed down from generation to generation as cultural heritage. She immediately thinks there's no need for preservation. She'll just cling to him and enjoy the moment. Benji tells Joe to stop drooling and get down to business, reminding her why she wanted to meet His Highness. The main character remembers that she really was going to say something important. Kim Gi-ja says that so many days without seeing him almost robbed her of her memory. She also asks where he went a few days ago. The guy replies that he still suspects her and wonders what the point of these questions is. The main character asks what exactly he suspects her of, because she is a gift from the gods, sent to make him happy and bring only good things into his life. The guy replies that he doesn't understand what she's talking about, but at the same time, he doesn't think it's anything bad. She tells His Highness that everything is fine and asks him to simply trust her. Then she'll be able to give him some truly valuable advice. The blonde agrees and says he'll tell her everything. The guy mentions Hestian, and the main character immediately remembers that there will be a celebration there in a month and asks if His Highness is going to go there. She recalls a scene from the novel where Priscilla lost her temper over a childish remark. The Empress then said that while they were having fun and strengthening their friendship, the black-eyed one and Hestian would devour Orban. The Empress couldn't believe that while Kyle was making friends, the black-eyed prince had already laid his hands on Orban. The protagonist realizes that without Kyle's face, she would have been as angry as Priscilla at that moment. But now everything is different, because Kim Ji-ja, known as a lady who can get close to His Highness, is standing right in front of him. The blonde asks how she even knows about this, and how she knows about his future plans. He was only going to make a decision today, and the main character realizes that she said too much. Kim Ji-ja becomes confused and says that she heard the servants talking during dinner. She tries to justify herself and says that everything is not that simple and she cannot tell everything. But she wishes only the best for His Highness and is certain that he needs to go to Orban, not to Hestian. There's a black mineral there called Orbsidal. The lady wonders what a complicated name that is and why the author is disliked for it. She says it's a black ore that can be used to make incredibly strong items and repeats that he can't go to Hestian. The guy asks again how she knows all this and asks her to answer directly. Kim Ji-ja replies that everyone in the palace knows that the Empress is almost possessed by Orbsidal. They say that every spring she sends gifts to Orban. and the servants who prepared them discussed it among themselves. Benji notices that the atmosphere has suddenly become too tense. The main character asks Kyle to cast aside his doubts and go to Orban, realizing how strange this sounds. But she can't let him fall into eternal sleep like this and must convince him. The blonde man asks why he should listen to her. And these words stun Kim Ji-ja. She tries to say something, but in the end only admits that, as she said, she likes His Highness. The guy replies that he needs a clear answer, not feelings, because she could be anyone. The main character exclaims, doesn't he understand that she's just worried about him? She admits that she can be strange and awkward, and asks you to trust her at least once. The guy pushes her away and turns around. Seeing his face, the girl freezes, and His Highness turns to Benji and says that they are leaving. Rick opens the door and asks what Joe is standing there for, then walks up to the guy and apologizes. He says that next time he will share his potatoes with him, but the main character remains silent. Then the man turns her towards him, notices the tears, and asks what happened. Kim Ji-ja screams that Kyle is an idiot, saying she talked so much about her feelings and it was all in vain. She looks around, wondering what will happen if the prince hears this. She wonders if she's ever given bad advice, and realizes she's neither a murderer nor a shaman. She's simply doing it because she likes him. The blonde returns to the mansion and realizes that he has no reason to believe her, but his doubts still linger. This had never happened to him before, and he didn't think it was even possible. Benji tells His Highness that if it's Joe, he can reinvestigate. The blonde asks if he thinks Joe is lying, and does she look like a shaman? Benji admits he never thought Joe could lie, although she's good at pretending. He says he can't be completely sure, but he considers her an honest person. The blonde asks her if she likes him, and is told she probably does. After this, His Highness orders Benji to go to the servants and find out if there is anyone who knows Joe well. Kyle couldn't accept even obvious sincerity, because that's how he was raised. To become the crown prince, he had to suspect everyone, otherwise one day he would be put into eternal sleep like his brothers. The next day, the main character wakes up and goes to the horses, asking Dieppe to stop licking her face. She says that this is already something romantic, and that grooms also have feelings. Suddenly, she hears a familiar voice and turns around. Seeing Theo, she rejoices and asks where he has been all this time. Then she notices his face and asks what happened to him. The guy replies that he simply didn't get enough sleep. He asks in response what is wrong with Joe's face, and whether she is sad because she hasn't seen him for a long time. The main character smiles and replies yes. The guy says he wants to go for a ride and asks her to bring Lindsay. After a while, he notices that the other servants are bowing to him or falling on their faces. The main character wonders if this is true. The guy replies that yes, and that no one puts him on a horse the way she does. He looks at Joe and asks what's happening to her because she keeps freezing and staring into space. She doesn't joke or laugh, and he asks what happened. Seeing her face, he falls silent and says that he doesn't need to fall, she can sit him up herself. He hopes that in the future, the servants won't have to bow. Soon they're already sitting by the stables. The girl says that Kyle doesn't seem to believe in her feelings, and although she understands his mistrust, it still hurts. Theo asks why he doesn't believe her, since she confessed, and does he really not feel anything for her? The main character says that she probably likes him more than he likes her. And even if he says something about what he knows about relationships, the young man replies that he'll become an expert in time. He adds that in a few years, people will be lining up to see him. Imagining this, the main character laughs and asks if he will really go out into the world. She says that he will make quite a gentleman, but the young man doesn't understand what's funny about that. Kim Ji-ja replies that he's not a true nobleman, but merely the son of a wealthy family. In high society, looks and money aren't enough. Title and influence are essential. She smiles and remembers how, as a child, she also dreamed of becoming famous and rich. She thought she'd grow up and be rich, like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. The guy doesn't understand what she's talking about, and remarks that she sounds strange. He says she talks like she's not 17. Kim Ji-ja realizes he's being too perceptive. Because she's actually 25, she decides to quickly change the subject. Noticing a book nearby, she asks Theo to tell her about it, admitting that she cannot read. The guy asks if she's talking about the Viltheon legend, and she's surprised. He replies that yes, and tells of the red land of Viltheon, where Tae Yang rests. Only someone with red eyes like Tae Yang can become emperor. At this moment, the main character throws the book on the floor and the young man screams. He asks if she really dislikes this legend so much. Kim Gi-eum-ja replies that she can't stand it. She is indignant. Is there any point at all in the fact that only a person with a red iris can rule? She says that genes are more complex, there are dominant and recessive ones, and it's all a coincidence. Even an emperor's child can be born with a different eye, hair, and skin color. She asks what's so special about those red eyes. At this moment, the young man covers her mouth with a book and then removes it. He says that he really likes Jo, and the girl is amazed by such a confession. He says that he enjoys meeting her sometimes and asks her to stop insulting the imperial family. He reminds her that walls have ears, and if anyone hears, it will be bad. After a while, the lady looks back at the book. She worries about his words about being sentenced to death for such conversations and decides to be more careful. She understands that he is afraid of even the smallest things and remains a child. The lady thinks that there is clearly something wrong with this legend and how many people suffer because of it. As she gets up, she feels a strange pain and wonders what this sensation is. At that moment, Benji comes up to her. He asks what happened, if she is sick, and if everything is okay with her. The main character hopefully asks where His Highness Kyle is. Benji, disappointed, replies that Kyle asked me to tell him that he was going to Orban. The girl jumps up, and Benji says he decided to give it a try since she insisted. Kim Gi-eum-ja asks if that's true. She remembers how she told Kyle all sorts of things at night, claiming that just the sight of him could cure all illnesses. She thinks that in Orban he needs to be especially careful and not display the imperial coat of arms, since the Countess's family was plunged into eternal sleep by the previous emperor. The Countess hates the imperial family of Biltion because the previous emperor destroyed her line. Orban will not give up its minerals to those who destroyed their land. The region has long ceased trading, and Orbzidal has become almost a myth, overgrown with rumors. Sometimes greedy nobles tried to negotiate, but they were always met with the cold shoulder. Someone at the table said that they could shower Orban with gifts, but it was useless, because they returned everything and stated outright that Orbzidal was not for sale. Most likely, they simply do not want to give an advantage to their enemies, whom they consider to be the imperial family, so any mention of Orban only evokes irritated sighs. The lady wanted to tell him how, in the book, the main character managed to melt the Countess's heart. But she understood that he wouldn't believe it, so she decided to know her limits and came up with a more moderate version. In her reflections, she decided that the way to Countess Orban's heart lay through constant kindness and daily attention, like a quiet knock on the door, day after day. His blue eyes could work to his advantage if he showed that he was as far away from his mother as possible. She had no idea that he had any sympathy for the Empress, and she certainly had no intention of insulting his stepmother. And then the lady wondered if she had said all this out loud, and why it was impossible to break this strange connection at all, since she didn't even know if he could hear her. Kim Gi-eum-ja wonders if he can even hear her, and wonders why they haven't invented proper two-way communication in this world. She turns to Benji and asks if the prince received her messages, to which he replies that he may have, but the prince seemed to have asked her to stop talking. Kim Gi-eum-ja immediately hits her head against a tree and thinks she just wants to fall through the ground. Benji realizes that he has been assigned another investigation, but he still hasn't found anything suspicious. It all seems confusing, but he still doesn't believe that the lady is really an assassin, and she says that he is the only one she can ask for advice. She cautiously inquires about what the local girls do on days like these, since Benji is the only one who knows about her situation and understands her. She feels awkward asking about it, but she really needs to know, and her hair has grown too long. After some time, Benji cuts her hair and brings her some spare clothes. The main character thanks him and asks him to be careful, and Benji, leaving for the first time, admits the thought that she could be something much stranger. A week later, the butler comes to Jo and asks how he is feeling, noting that he seems like a reliable person. The main character smiles and says that she is trying to gain muscle because people are often distracted by her appearance. She also asks if it is true that 4 horses need to be prepared and where exactly they are going to go. The butler replies that His Highness is heading to Orban, and the girl sighs with relief, realizing that her pleas were not in vain, although he is still angry that he sent Pell. She notices that Uncle Pell has come alone, but the man replies that there are others beyond the fence, and from his sadness it is clear that the prince still does not notice his efforts. The misunderstanding with Pell only intensifies, and the man says that the guy is frowning in vain, because His Highness actually values him very much. As the man leaves, he says that he doesn't care about her courage, and the girl advises her to be careful, after which she hears a strange noise from the horses. She thinks it's Lindsay, runs up and throws a boot at the stranger, shouting that he's a thief and how dare he steal horses from the palace, and he replies that he has permission. The girl objects, saying that Prince Kyle is not here, and when the boy removes his hood, she sees black hair and hears that Prince Theo gave permission. He explains that this is Kyle's brother, and although he fell asleep during the conversation, he still gave permission, and Kim Jae-ja asks if this is really Prince Isaka in front of her. Despite his black eyes, he appears cheerful and simple-minded, just like in the book, and he repeats that he acted with Theo's permission. She apologizes and asks again for the name of Kyle's brother, and the brunette is surprised how one can work in the palace and not know this. He gives his full name, Theodore de Biltion, whom everyone calls Theo, and the girl remembers that the book says almost nothing about him. Like other princes without red eyes, he was plunged into eternal sleep and buried without honors, and after that his name ceased to be mentioned. The brunette notices how pale Joe has become, and she sharply asks if he knows where Prince Theo's resting place is now. He explains the way to the White Tower behind the Rose Garden, and the girl thanks him and immediately runs away, not listening to what to do with the horse. Soon she stands before the guards and demands to see Prince Theodore immediately. The guard rudely drives her away, but she says that she came on the orders of Prince Isaac, and the man is surprised, taking him for a simple servant. She explains that she works in Kyle's stables, but the guard tells her to get out, saying that Prince Kyle will not help. He's teaching her to make acquaintances with important people, and then a maid comes up and asks what's going on. They tell her that Prince Theo is sleeping, and the girl understands that everything is exactly as described in the book, which makes her furious. Theo slept more and more until one day he woke up, and later, Kyle began to suspect Princess Sienna. Remembering this, Kim Jae-ja clenches her fists and rushes forward, and the guards shout that she is a trespasser. She thinks that if they want to catch her, they must first catch up with her, and she is surprised by the silence in the prince's chambers. At this moment, a boy comes out of the room and complains about the noise, and the girl immediately rushes to him and hugs him. He is surprised and asks what happened, orders the guard to leave, and then returns to bed as she sits down next to him. She says she has heard rumors about the little prince, and he is surprised by her tone. She asks if he's sleeping again, and he replies that he's been feeling sleepy all the time lately. Kim Jae-ja says that he shouldn't sleep so much, because even the court physician couldn't find the cause of this condition. She thinks about checking food and medicine, but she doesn't know how exactly to save Theo. The boy smiles and says that he is pleased with the way she addresses him. She replies that sometimes she says stupid things and asks how he feels. He jokes that he will cut off her head, and she begins to ask about the changes in the room, the food and the servants, but he says that everything was as usual. She asks again, but notices that he is falling asleep again and calls out to him in a panic. She offers to talk or ride Lindsay, but he falls asleep right in her arms. No matter how hard she tries to wake him up, nothing works, and she is thrown out of the palace. She is told to stay out of the way and get back to work in the stables. She is angry with helplessness, realizing that in this world she is just a secondary character. She knows that if nothing is done, Theo will fall into eternal sleep, and she does not understand what a simple groom can change. As she returns, she sees Isaac, who notices her and says that she cannot leave the horses unattended. He asks if she's okay, and she realizes that he really is kind, just like in the book. She remembers what he was always like and understands that such people do not change. Gathering her courage, she asks if he really just inquired about her condition. Having received confirmation, she immediately bows and asks for help, because her friend is plunging into eternal sleep. Isaka asks who she's talking about, and she replies that this man became family to her from the first day at the stables. He used to be full of strength, but now he only sleeps, and she begs the prince to help. Isaka suspects poisoning and asks for a doctor, but she admits that she doesn't know what to do. She remembers that Isaka comes from the provinces and cannot ignore other people's misfortunes. Even though she had conflicts with Daloa, now it was more important to save Theo. Isaka says he will do his best and turn to smart people. She realizes that he is a good man, and he asks her name. She replies that her name is Joe, and he promises to sort it out and advises her to rest. She thinks she always looks tired no matter how hard she tries. As the prince leaves, she believes that tomorrow she will find out what poisoned Theo and hopes that Kyle and Benji would be nearby. She understands that they would not believe her and would consider her a shaman, and mentally scolds Kyle. She hopes he didn't hear that. Meanwhile, Kyle in the carriage says that he heard everything, and Benji looks at him in surprise. 3 days pass, But Isaka still doesn't show up. She chops wood and gets angry because he promised to come, but the guards won't let her see Theo. Rick notices her condition and asks what happened, and she replies that everything is terrible. He asks if they are talking about the new Black Prince, and she confirms. Rick says he left this morning, and she asks where. He replies that he's going to the same place as Kyle, to Orban. She screams in shock that Isaka promised to help, and she believed him. Rick asks her not to cut down living trees, but she only thinks about betrayal. Isaka flinches, and Deloa asks him to be calm. He asks where they are rushing to, and she says that they don't know Kyle's route. She thought he would focus on Hessian, but he replies that he promised to help. She recalls him talking about his duty to his family and his fear for his country. He remembers Joe's plea for help. Deloa says it is not his responsibility, and he needs to think rationally. He agrees, although he has doubts. She remembers helping the children and thinks that Isaka could help Joe, and he suddenly notices that she called him by his name. Kim Gyamja understands that there are no gods here, and if she does nothing, Teo cannot be saved. She climbs onto the roof and screams that Kyle is beautiful from head to toe. She calls him to return, because Theodore is falling into eternal sleep.